All right, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, December 14th. We'll call this meeting to order. We would ask those with us to please rise if you are willing and able for the invocation delivered by Pastor Jeff Gannon of the Chapel Hill United Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. My understanding is the pastor is with us virtually, so Pastor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Let us pray. God of us all, we give thanks and praise for the gift of this day that you have made. We do pray that you would help us to rejoice and to be glad in it. On this day, we give thanks for the gift of elected officials who are willing to serve our community and your people in this way. So bless them with wisdom. Help them to know that you are with them and that you are for them. On this day, we remember the life and legacy of Senator Bob Dole. We give thanks for the gift that he has left us. Help these politicians to carry that legacy forward and help us as a community to know your blessing. We're mindful today of those who are suffering because of the recent tornadoes. Be with those communities, those families, those persons who are suffering even as we pray. May you be the one who holds them in the palms of your divine hands. We entrust this meeting to you as we entrust our lives and our community to you, and pray that you would guide us and keep us in your love and care all the days of our lives. For we offer this prayer in the name which is above every name, your holy name, O God. Amen and amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's get started. Madam Clerk.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 7th, 2021.
Has every member had a chance to review the minutes, and if so, is there any discussion? If there's no discussion on the minutes, now make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. If there's no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public agenda, Andrew Crane, Blind Community in Wichita.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Crane with Guiding Paws ICT, 700 North Market in downtown Wichita. Here today to talk to you about 2 major big items for the national or the blind community here in Wichita. One is we need to take a look, and I have a challenge for you guys today, and is to take a moment out of your day to take a walk down in downtown Wichita at the sidewalks, the different roads and stuff in downtown Wichita, because we really need to get the sidewalks up to date and up to code, and to help out the blind community to navigate and to get around. There's several new buildings that are getting remodeled, and we know that, but we would like to see more from the city council to take some time to help out the blind community, and that the other item on my agenda today is to talk to you guys about what the Federation of Kansas, the blind community is doing. The National Federation of the Blind of Kansas is doing. They are working on a bill, technology bill, that we would like the City Council to contact Ron Estes and Dr. Roger Marshall too, to get that going. A lot of the Federation colleagues of mine have been contacting their congressmen and up in D.C., and I am going to be going up to Washington, D.C. in February with the Federation of Kansas and the delegation and that. So I am looking for some feedback from you guys and getting that going. And item C is I would like to get a small meeting with the mayor to talk about the transit and seeing how we are doing some more updating of the transit center or what's going on there, because the blind community needs to be involved in that heavily. And I am willing to step up here and get that done. So thank you. And any questions that I can answer?
There are no questions at this time.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Madam Clerk.
David Calland, Municipal Rights.
Hello?
Welcome.
It was supposed to be municipal codes. The codes here in the city of Wichita should meet up with the codes that are international, including the Council of Europe, which this country is a part of. I was supposed to give this talk to the legislature 3.5 weeks ago, and my ride didn't show up. So as the CDC finds that a vaccine is a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a disease. That's what it's on the CDC site. He says, I do hope anybody who wants and needs a vaccine gets one available to them at whatever they can cost, be charged. So I'm not anti-vax, okay? But I am anti, for people who have, let's say, wearing masks and you have a slight case of emphysema, it almost kills you. This country belongs, like I said, to the Council of Europe. It was joined in 1999, and you're under, believe it or not, Wichita, Kansas is under the Vaccines Ethical Codes and Practice Considerations. And 7.3, I'm going to give this entire packet to you. I was going to make a packet for each, but I don't get paid until Wednesday. So with respect to ensuring high vaccine uptake, ensure that citizens are informed that vaccination is not mandatory and no one politically, socially, or otherwise pressured to get themselves vaccinated if they do not wish to do so. This is the Council of Europe. It says it in 3 other places, at least 3 other places, that any experimental vaccine is a choice, not a mandate. Okay? Then we have the Declaration of Helsinki, which I do federal and international criminal law, which was pronounced, and I hope each one of you get a packet. This is the Nuremberg Code. It says no forced vaccinations by any experimental vaccine. And all of the fast-track vaccines are experimental. This is the Declaration of Human Rights, World Declaration of Human Rights, that says no forced vaccines under any conditions without full consent of the vaccinated. This is an adverse effects or adverse effects for reports. It's VAERS of ours. And as of 2 weeks ago, there were 927,738 reports of adverse effects on the vaccines. There were 19,532 deaths as of 3 weeks ago. There was 3,148 miscarriages and 31,852 permanent disabilities. And those numbers, if you go down here to the next paragraph, there's 2 or 3 statements by Harvard Medical School's $1 million study over 3 years showing it's 1%. So you multiply that times 100 and then subtract the amount on the page, and you have almost the exact amount. This is a federal court case, Supreme Court case.
So you have 30 seconds left.
30 seconds, okay.
And
Well, I'm
did you
going to
wanna
make sure you
Mention
have
the city
this
code that
packet.
you're worried about? 'Cause the subject was city codes. Is there something in our city code you want to touch on?
Yeah, I want to
before?
make sure the city codes don't have any mandates
Okay.
for vaccines. So where do I leave these?
You can leave them with the clerk, or we can pick them up.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
I want to make sure I don't have my parking ticket stuck in there. Thank you.
Yes.
Consent agenda items 1 through 15.
All right, consent agenda items 1 through 15. Is there discussion about the consent agenda? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to pull items number 11 and 12.
Items number 11 and 12 will be pulled from the consent agenda and placed as the next items that we shall discuss. Is there further discussion on the consent agenda? If there is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda with the exception of items 11 and 12. Is there a second? Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. We are back on item 11. The chair recognizes Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Due to a personal conflict, I need to abstain from this vote.
The record show that the Vice Mayor is abstaining for this vote. Is there any further discussion on item 11? If there is none, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action on item 11. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Councilmember Fry. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. I've received 6 yea votes and 1 abstention. That motion does pass. We are now on item 12. Chair recognizes Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Due to a personal conflict, I need to abstain from this item.
Let the record show that the Vice Mayor is abstaining from this vote due to a personal conflict. Is there any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action on item 12 of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Item has been seconded by almost said Vice Mayor, by Councilmember Fry. Clerk will open the roll. I have received 6 yea votes to 1 abstention. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Board of Bids and Contracts dated December 13, 2021.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Hannah Lang, Department of Finance. First engineering bid we have is water distribution system to serve Heritage at Auburn Hills Edition. Recommendation is Apex Excavating for groups 1, 2, and 3 for a bid total of $139,745.20.
If you would hold for one moment, could we get staff to minimize the box on the shared screen so that folks can see the numbers? Thank you.
2022 utility cut repairs, PPJ Construction for $2,802,450. Paving, Boston, Harvest, College Hill, Plainview basketball courts, defer to December 20th Board of Bids. Water distribution system, Emerald Bay, 4th edition, Phase 3, McCullough excavation for $33,450. Paving Doris Circle to serve Emerald Bay 4th Edition, Pearson Construction for $85,368.15. Water Distribution System tied for Monarch Landing 5th Edition, Nowat Construction for Groups 1 and 2 for a bid total of $164,933.50. 20,000 GVW step vans, Omaha Truck Center for the base bid and options 1 and 3 for a total of $362,900. Construct and erect Nomar Market shade structure, defer to December 20th Board of Bids. Sedans, SUVs, cargo vans, and pickup trucks. Recommendation is Davis Moore Automotive, Don Hatton Chevrolet, Don Hatton Ford, and Rusty Eck Ford. These are base bid with all options. Pump Station 7 and 8 telemetry upgrade, R.E. Pedrotti Company Incorporated for $50,280. This is our purchasing procurement website, as well as our current open request for proposals. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none. With that, is there any input from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Extension of EDX tax exemption request, CE Machine Company, Inc.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development for the record. The item before you today is a consideration of the extension of a 5-year tax abatement for CE Machine. CE Machine was founded in 1975 and is a manufacturer of medium-sized precision parts and assemblies for the aerospace industry. Currently, their customers include Bell Helicopters, Textron Aviation, Boeing, Gulfstream, Embraer. They are located at 1741 South Hoover Court, which is near Harry and Hoover Street, near the airport. On this aerial, you can see Harry Street running across the top from left to right, and Hoover Street running just a little right of center. The area outlined in red is the land and buildings that are owned by CE Machine. The expansion that they did in 2016 was on the south end of their property. On February 9th of 2016, the City Council approved a 57.5% tax exemption on a 5+5 year basis through the Economic Development Exemption Program. The Economic Development Exemption Program is a program that is authorized by the state of Kansas that is geared towards manufacturing companies, research and development companies, and companies in warehousing and distribution, all for products that are used in interstate commerce. The company completed a 25,000 square foot expansion at a cost of $1,750,000. These are a couple of photos of that expansion project. The company projected in 2015 that it would invest $1,750,000, which it did. It projected that it would create 15 net new jobs above its base employment. It currently is at 16 new jobs. It actually peaked at 42 net new jobs, so well above the 15 that they projected. And the wages they projected in 2015 were a little above $57,000. They're actually over $59,000 today. And the company currently has 12 positions open. A cost-benefit analysis was run to update what was projected in 2015. The updated shows that the projected was 2.79 for the city overall, and the actual ratio of benefits to costs is 3.43 to 1 for the city overall. The projected for the city's general fund was 2.51 to 1. That is actually now at 3 to 1 for the city's general fund. The city's debt service fund was projected to be 3.17 to 1, and the actual is 4.1 to 1 overall. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council extend the tax exemption on the Economic Development Exemption approved property for CE Machine Company Incorporated for a second 5-year term. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for staff? See none. Is there input from the public? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept, then I will recognize Councilmember Bluebog as this item resides in District 4.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate that. And I'm excited to hear that we're renewing this. Can't believe it's been 5 years since we were out there and initiated this, but I'd like to take staff's recommended action to extend the tax exemption of the IRB finance property for CE Machine Company for a second 5-year term.
Second.
Motion has been made and the seconded by Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Next item.
Extension of EDX tax exemption request, Perfecta, Inc.
Again, Mayor and council members, Tim Goodpasture with the city's Office of Economic Development for the record. The next item is a consideration of an extension of a 5-year review of the tax abatement for Perfecta. Perfecta was founded in 1984 and is involved in manufacturing and assembly of aircraft and aerospace parts. It is located at 480 East 21st Street North, which is near 21st and Broadway. On this aerial, you can see Broadway on the left side of the aerial running from top to bottom. On the bottom of the aerial, you can see 21st Street running from left to right. The area outlined in red is the property that is owned by Perfecta. The area outlined in blue is where the expansion project was completed. On December 1st of 2015, the City Council approved an 89% tax exemption on a 5+5 year basis through the Economic Development Exemption Program. Again, this is a state-authorized program for companies involved in manufacturing, research and development, or warehousing and distribution of products used in interstate commerce. The company completed a 60,000 square foot expansion at a cost of $7,120,000. These are some photos of the interior of Perfecta's facility. Again, some additional photos of the interior of their facility. The company projected that it would invest $7,120,000, which it did. It projected that it would create 16 net new jobs above its base employment. Today, they are at 12 jobs above their base employment, but they peaked at 73, so they were well above the 16 that were projected, and they currently have 24 open positions. They also projected that the wages for the new jobs would be almost $50,000 a year. Currently, they're at $57,000 a year. Therefore, staff has determined that they are compliant with where they needed to be. An updated cost-benefit analysis was completed. Again, the projected overall for the city was 1.34 to 1 in terms of a ratio of benefits to costs. The updated analysis shows that the ratio is 1.44 to 1. For the city's general fund, it was 1.3 to 1. The actual is 1.38 to 1. And for the city's debt service fund, it was projected to be 1.44 to 1. The actual is 1.58 to 1. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council extend the tax exemption on the economic development exemption approved property for Perfecta Incorporated for a second 5-year term. Matt Smith, who is the Vice President of Finance for Perfecta, is here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Are there questions for staff? Seeing none. Is there input from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion? If there is no further discussion, then the chair recognizes Councilmember Claycomb as this item resides in District 6.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, for the analysis. I'd like to move to extend the tax exemption on IRB finance property for Perfecta Inc. for a second 5-year term.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Approval of a contract for third-party vetting.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. This item before you today is a contract amendment for external vetting services focused within the redevelopment and economic development department. So with that, staff worked with the purchasing department to look for companies that could offer background checks on companies that are looking to do development and redevelopment projects with the city. And with that, we found two companies, TrueView and Kroll. So for that, we had them provide both their white cheeses services that were provided in the cost, as well as sample products that we could use to see if the work they do would be fitting for the needs that we had. Following that, those proposals and sample products were reviewed by both economic development staff and the law department to see if they fit our needs. Following that, TrueView was the recommended company based on the services they provide, as well as meeting the price point that we're looking to hit for providing these services. TrueView is currently a contract holder with the city HR department for the vetting they do there. This amendment would just increase the not to exceed amount by $15,000. Doesn't mean we're going to be spending that, but it means that just we have the capacity to depend on how much is done there. And with that, just a note, I'll cover this later, but I want to hit that now with that amendment. That $15,000, any of those costs would still be borne by a developer. We just had to increase the contract to be able to have that capacity to do so. So TrueView offers what they call a red flag report. So they search on an individual basis about 14 different databases, and a company, I think, about 10 to 12. And with that, they're searching the national and state databases for criminal, sex offender, liens, bankruptcies, and a few other those. And then with this, the contract will also have an addendum where they will also search the local county courts as well for any cases. And so with that, the way this process would work is when an applicant comes forward for redevelopment programs, we'll have primarily a couple of resources on this. So if they're applying for development and redevelopment programs, as well as if economic development issues like an RFP or an RFQ for projects, or if there's other projects that the same manager determines needs to go through this process. And so at that time, the applicant will provide their information to TrueView, as well as pay the costs that are associated with doing that vetting. And with that, then the TrueView provides their red flag report, which is attached to your agenda report as a sample of what they do. And from that, the staff will provide that, as well as a recommendation to the city manager on whether they see any concerns that need to go further and have further research, or if they don't see anything that's of concern and the project can move forward. And so if there are concerns and we need to do additional research at that time, we would have to meet back with that developer and see if they want to move forward, at which point they would have to pay any additional costs to do that additional research. Here's an example of the cost structure that would occur. So if you have a company that comes forward and they have one key person, so TrueView does a company and a key entity. So with that, that's the $600 plus an administrative cost by to the city for a cost of $850. If they were to add one additional person, that would be an additional $375. And there's a full cost scale in the agenda report as well, but just wanted to provide an example of what it might look like for a company and one or two individuals that would be involved in that. With that, we recommend updating the economic development guidelines to cover that. So we have some recommended text that includes both the city administrative fee as well as the coverage of any third-party fees that are associated with these redevelopment projects. But while doing this, staff noted a few other things that we just would like to bring to your attention and recommend a change on that. These are primarily references. So in the industrial revenue bonds background and purpose section 9, it references paragraph 4 incentives. Through the formatting, there's no longer a paragraph 4, but it's actually just section 9 of the incentives section below is what it'd be referencing. Same thing, tax increment financing. There are two recommendations there. First, there are two sections in tax increment financing. One is a requirement section, and right below that is qualifications. And we noticed that in the qualification section, it still says requirements. So we recommend changing requirements to qualifications just to match that section. As well as in section E below, same thing with a reference. It says the project shall serve a majority of public purposes identified, and then it did not have identified section, so we are including an incentive objectives above to cover that as well. With that, I would stand for any questions.
So just to clarify, this is for a third-party vetting process for developers and folks who want to do business with the city, who otherwise we would internally vet.
Correct. It takes it out of the internal and provides it to third party that is their sole purpose.
And this is, will be paid for by the company who is looking to
Correct.
receive something from the city.
Those costs are passed on to them.
And this is not applicable to all of our employees.
It's correct, yes.
Okay.
So.
Just want to make sure we were clear on what the scope
Absolutely.
of this was. Further questions for staff? See none, thank you. Is there input or discussion from the public on this item? If there is not, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to Bob and staff for doing this and bringing about this opportunity for vetting. I know you had made that commitment, but I appreciate it.
Further discussion on this item. I'll also add that I think this is good policy moving forward. I think it takes out maybe some unintended politics or bias when it comes to looking at applications, allowing a third party who only skin in the game is to do the vetting. I think allows us an extra tool in our toolbox. So I appreciate staff for bringing this to us. And with that, if there is no further discussion, then I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the contract amendment with TrueView and the updates to the economic development guidelines related to external vetting and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk, open roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Fire radio replacement.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Tammy Snow, Fire Chief. I'm here today to ask for the funding. Excuse me, sorry. I'm here today to ask for the funding for our fire radio replacement. They are one of our mission-critical items, our tools that we utilize, and they're required every 8 years to be updated and maintained so that we stay current with the current technology. Also, they are compatible with our surrounding partners, and also that we can continue to obtain parts to repair them. The radio replacement would be for our portables, our mobiles, and the accessories, specifically the batteries and the chargers for those particular items. If we purchase them now, we would save 10%, because there's a 10% price increase in January of 2022. And the project cost approximately $2.3 million to be financed out of the general obligation bond. So with that, my recommendation is that you approve the project, adopt the bonding resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. So I'll stand for questions.
Questions for the Chief? Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, Chief. It's not a question, it's just a moment of praise. Thank you for being so forward-thinking and catching that the price increase was going to happen in January and doing it now so that we can save 10% of $2.3 million. So thank you for that. Appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Chief, I know that sometimes old equipment like helmets, safety goggles, et cetera, sometimes get repurposed. Is there an application for our old radios to have that intention?
Yeah, sometimes we can utilize them within the city itself, some of the other departments, and sometimes they never go to waste. Or sometimes we also have a partnership with Fire Forestry. We also have partnerships throughout the state in which we repurpose them to some of our partners, like some of the smaller communities that have volunteer departments and so forth. But yeah, they never go to waste.
Is there further questions for the Chief? See none. Thank you, Chief. Is there input from the public on this item? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the project, adopt the bonding resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Service Employees International Union Memorandum of Agreement.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council. I'm Chris Bezricki, HR Director. For your consideration is a tentative labor agreement between the City of Wichita and the Service Employees International Union. The proposed agreement is for 3 years. It was approved by the SEIU membership as of yesterday, and it was almost a 6-4 vote in favor of the contract, or the labor agreement. So with that, I'd like to maybe walk you through some of the highlights that we have. So there again, it is for 3 years, starting in 2022, ending in the end of 2024. The agreement covers approximately 784 employees covered by the bargaining unit, and those cover almost all of our departments based on their positions. The agreement and provisions will be incorporated into the revised budget for your consideration as well. The economics highlights of the contract, if you may recall, the pay scale is in 16 steps. We're going to lower that to, or reduce that to 15 steps. That'll effectively take out some of the lower cost wages, and so that gets us to the $15 wage in entry level for all positions, and then it goes up from there. So we remove that first entry level step because that was the lowest step, and we don't pay at that rate anymore. The general wage adjustment for the contract also includes a 4% increase of those 15 steps. Employees will be eligible for a merit of 2.5% based on performance. There will be a $1,000 bonus to current employees who were employed with us from March 20th through March 21st, the height of the pandemic, and those folks that did not have an opportunity to work remotely, but were in the field, were exposed, and they did a frontline service for all of us. And so we certainly appreciate their work and are going to reward those folks for that effort. This is a similar concept that the school district used as well. We're also adding Juneteenth as a paid holiday in 2022. In 2023, the general pay adjustment will go to 1.5, which is more traditional that we've been looking at over the last 10 years. We will still include a 2.5% merit step for those eligible employees based on performance. The employees who are topped out at the top of the 15 step are not eligible for the 2.5% merit because they're topped out, and so those folks will be awarded a $500 one-time bonus payment for their efforts as well. And there's a very much the same arrangement for 2024. A couple other changes in the language part of the contract. Some of the SEIU workers are in the clerical division of the police department, and there's some difference of understanding with regards to bureaus and shifts, and so we made sure that we clarified what that was, so those would be easy transitions for those folks in order to get overtime. There was a language amendment to clarify open positions for advertising. We advertised all positions. We wanted to make them competitive. There was a little confusion about what's a transfer and what's an open position, so they are all considered an open position. The language to include all paid leave of absence as hours worked during snow and ice emergency. If you're on sick leave on Tuesday and you're called out for an emergency on Thursday or Friday, those hours will count immediately towards overtime, as opposed to, well, you're off on sick leave, so you have to make up for those other 8 hours. So it really affects the 40-hour work week, and it does enhance folks that are working snow and ice where they'll be paid overtime without having to make up for the time that they were off earlier in the week. And then there's language amending the stewards with regards to, how do stewards, how do they leave the work area in order to attend union affairs? And so we made sure that was a smoother process, so everyone had some approval, and there was no surprise that someone left the workplace in order to do union activity there. There again, very, very small issue. So with that, we will recommend that the city approve the agreement between the City of Wichita and the Service Employee International Union for this current agreement, new current agreement.
Are there questions for staff? And you said this was voted on about 60-40 in
About
favor?
60-40, it was over the last several days, starting, I guess, early in the weekend, and they concluded their vote at 6 o'clock yesterday, and by the time they looked it up, the numbers, it was 59.6.
Okay. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Chris, in the green sheet for staff report, it says that the contract is estimated to exceed the budget amounts by approximately $3 million over 3 years, with about half of that coming from the general fund. Where is the balance coming from? And obviously, this is something we're going to have to work into future budgets. We're not using ARPA money for this, are we?
We will be using ARPA money, I understand, for at least the $1,000 bonus amount.
Thank you.
The other amount will come from the general fund, and if I understand how the budget works, and I'm going to be on kind of a stretch here, the other money will come out of the water and sewer fund for those employees covered under there.
Water and sewer fund,
Yes.
the enterprise fund for those employees?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public on this item?
Good morning, Celeste Reset. How are you all? So my question has to do with, are any of the union employees with Century 2 affected by this contract? And if so, I know that they were going to be negotiated opportunities to work for ASM Global. Has that been arranged at this point?
Mr. Manager.
Yes, I can let Chris address that as well, but yes, we have worked with all of the employees that would be in fact impacted by the ASM transfer.
Yes, we've been putting our eyes on this issue. I've been meeting personally with employees at Century 2. Dante Martin has been personally meeting with employees, and we've included ESOL in our most recent meetings. And so even if an employee is looking at, has to accept a position, maybe at a lower pay rate, the union has agreed to enter into a redlining agreement with us, so that employee will not take a loss of pay until the wages catch up. And so we feel confident that all those employees will be satisfied in the new jobs. But we are working with them. We're saying, here's, this job's available to you. They are actually going out into the work area and taking a look and see, do I want to be a van bus driver, or do I want to work over here? And so those discussions are actually happening. We feel pretty good about it.
Okay, thank you. Is there further input on the SEIU contract for discussion? Does anyone hear from the SEIU? See none. We will bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Seeing none, with that, I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the proposed 2022-2024 Memorandum of Agreement between the Service Employees International Union, Local 513, and the City of Wichita. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
American Rescue Plan Act, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funding Request for Grant Applications.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council, Scott Rigby, City Manager's Office. I'm going to kick this off, but we're going to tag team with Nikki Babcock, with our finance office. This is related to, if you remember back in the fall, we discussed with council and workshops the idea for community initiatives, and 2 of them were workforce development and small business entrepreneurial for recovery efforts. So this effort today is to kick that off, to talk about our application process, to solicit applications from the community for efforts to impact those 2 areas. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to Nikki for a few slides, and I'll come back and address the next part.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. The city was awarded $72.4 million in American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funding in May of 2021. So far, the city has received half of that, or $36 million to date, with the rest coming in mid-2022. The U.S. Treasury has identified eligible uses of ARPA funds, which includes to alleviate the negative economic impacts associated with the pandemic. It's important to get funding into the community quickly to help speed the recovery of the local economy. During the 2022 budget process, City Council prioritized use of ARPA funds, including to address economic impacts of the pandemic. Two of these initiatives, as mentioned by Scott, are workforce development and small business entrepreneurial development. Based on the City Council plans for ARPA funding, a request for grant applications has been developed by staff. This application includes eligibility criteria, the application process, proposed timeline and guidelines, and the applicant's responsibilities. Individuals and entities not in operation for at least 1 year are not eligible to apply for this grant application. And the projects in the submitted applications must expend their award by July 1st, 2023. However, earlier expenditure is encouraged. I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Thanks, Nikki. So in particular, we wanted to focus the effort on getting these funds out to the community on specific areas. So the purpose of the grant is to alleviate the negative economic hardships caused by the pandemic, which has disproportionately impacted low-income and minority communities, as well as specific industries. And I list 6 of the industries that we are of placed importance here. Obviously, these are important for Wichita: advanced manufacturing, aerospace, agricultural, entertainment and leisure, healthcare, and transportation and logistics. This isn't all-encompassing, but these are our main industries within the Wichita area. So specifically, workforce development grants, these 2 areas we'll talk about, are to speed the recovery of industries, again, for disadvantaged communities impacted negatively by the pandemic. And as you see here, aid in reopening businesses and plant expansions, upgrades delayed during the pandemic, provides workforce readiness to employed workers, assistance to accelerate the rehiring process, provide premium pay to eligible essential workers that worked during the pandemic. And such examples could be scholarship programs, apprentices, skill development, coaching. It can also be used to help to accelerate the rehiring process by providing childcare assistance or transportation assistance to allow workers to get back into the workforce. For small business entrepreneurial, again, to address the financial challenges caused by the pandemic. The specific areas we talk about is assisting new business startups and expansions. We know this has created an opportunity in some instances for individuals and groups to get together and figure out new opportunities to accelerate their startup ideas, to restore staffing to pre-pandemic staffing levels, to retain existing staff, and again, to provide premium pay and mitigate financial hardship. This is not designed to be all-encompassing. We are open to ideas that bring forward in the application process, and Nikki's now going to step through the formal application process and what the steps will be.
A panel will be formed by city staff to review the grant applications. The grant applications will be evaluated using a scoring matrix that's consistent with the application criteria. Based on the results of the panel review and available funding, recommendations for grant awards will be made to the City Council at a later date. This slide shows a proposed application process timeline with the notice of application for funding issued starting tentatively on December 22nd, 2021, with proposals due in early February, and the proposals reviewed and scored by the panel in mid-February. About a week later, the organizations will be notified of the recommended award, and then in mid-March, we'll bring back recommendations for the City Council to review and approve. So in summary, this application process for the workforce development and small business entrepreneurial grants align with the City Council ARPA priorities. Grant applications are anticipated to be open to the public on December 22nd. City staff are working with IT to launch a new ARPA page on the city's website. This page will most likely be under the Finance Department and will contain city information related to ARPA, For this grant application process, it would include the request for application guidelines, the application form, example scoring matrix, and information regarding questions on how to submit a grant application. City staff also plan to schedule a pre-application meeting to kick off the application process. The submitted applications again will be reviewed by a panel of city staff based on the application criteria, and recommended funding awards will be brought to the City Council for approval at a later date. It is recommended that the City Council authorize the allocation of up to $10 million of the city's ARPA funds to be used for workforce development and small business entrepreneurial development grants, and to authorize staff to initiate and coordinate the application process. Scott and I will stand for questions now. Thank you.
All right, let's open up for questions. First, we have Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. Thank you to Scott and Nikki. Appreciate your work on this. And I want to thank you for developing what I think is a really solid RFP. I've done several in my career, and I've said consistently, it's harder to distribute funds than it is to receive funds. So thank you for your efforts on this. I do have just a few questions, if that's okay. So first of all, you said that the council will make the final approval. Will those come to us all at one time, or will it be ongoing? So let's say that some people, apply early on. I can't remember the exact timeline. Or they're all due at one time, correct? Or is it ongoing?
Mayor, Councilmember Tuttle, great question. Our hope is we'll have enough qualified applicants that will be able to distribute all the funds at that single time. But in the instance, let's say we still have remaining funds after we reviewed all the applicants and those that are qualified and we bring forward, the council could choose to reopen the process and take additional solicitations, and then we'd come back again for recommendations down the road.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry if I missed this. I looked for it a couple times. So is there a cap of how much each entity can apply for, or is it whatever they think they need?
We have not set a cap. I can't remember, Nikki, we set a base.
We did not set a base either.
Okay, thank you. I know that we said we're going to put something on our website, but not everybody is enjoying the City of Wichita website on a Saturday evening. So how are we going to promote this opportunity in the community? And I was just thinking, will we be collaborating with the Chamber and the Greater Wichita Partnership and other entities, but the Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas, but how else will we get the word out so that small businesses know about this opportunity?
Again, Mayor, Councilmember Tuttle, great question. We will obviously put it on our website, but we know not everybody are web savvy or think about the website. So we'll use social media, we'll use Channel 7 to get the word out. I think we'll probably work with the mayor's weekly press conference, as well as working with the Chamber, the Greater Wichita Partnership, the workforce. The cautionary, Nikki can correct me, is we want to get the word out. We want to work with those organizations. At the same time, we want to be careful about conflict of interest of working so closely that they may end up becoming ineligible to apply. So we'll get the information out. We'll work with them to get the information out to their contacts. But we want to be careful that we're not becoming so close to them that they may become ineligible to submit for applications themselves.
Sure. I just have one more question, and
Sure.
then I'll behave. So do we anticipate that there'll be some sort of evaluation at the later down the road, or communicate to understand successes? My limited understanding of ARPA is that it's really complicated, and we don't know exactly what we're going to get asked later from the feds. And so how are we going to keep in contact with these people and these entities that receive funding and be able to see if it was successful, any measurable outcomes, in any success stories that we can convey and then share with the community as well?
Yes, good question, Councilmember Tuttle. We do have a subrecipient grant monitoring policy here at the City and the Finance Department. And so we will be doing subrecipient grant monitoring and following the grants closely and answering questions, making sure that they're being compliant and that we have all the information that we'll need.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for your efforts.
Mr. Manager has something to add?
Yes, Mayor, we're also looking at one other layer of review prior to this applications reaching the council, and then also to help us on the ongoing monitoring. The State Recovery Office has a contract with 5 firms to do auditing and oversight. And so I believe we're going to piggyback on that contract so that we'll have the benefit of that review to make sure that we are staying in compliance with the ARPA guidelines. And that will also help us as we look at how to evaluate projects as well.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just had three things. In regard to working with folks too closely and maybe having them be ineligible, will there just be a potential like applicant call so anybody's interested can hear from staff, everybody hears the same thing at the same time in the same way? That way we don't build out conflicts in that way.
Nikki will correct me if I get this wrong, but I think we mentioned in the presentation, we're going to do a pre-application review meeting that will go through the application, answer questions at that point. If they have additional questions, the effort of that is not only to, I'll call it, allow them to ask questions of us before the application process formally opens. And if we find questions that we need to clarify or add additional information, that'll allow us then to put us out, similar to a bid process, to put out additional information that we may have had a question from an applicant to disclose to everybody. So it's not just responding to a question from Vice Mayor, but everybody in the community gets to hear that response. And then if through the process, we also get additional questions that we need to clarify, then we will also then post the responses on our various media, whether it's the website, whether it's social media, whether it's the mayor's weekly press conference or other means, we'll get the word out as well.
Can you explain again who can actually apply for this funding?
So individuals cannot apply, and then entities that cannot be formed to apply for this, but public-private partnerships, economic or educational entities, as well as businesses can apply, so.
My last thing, could you go back to slide 65, please? So on this slide, is this for the job training, or is this also around small business entrepreneurship?
It can apply to both.
So my only concern on this, and last year working with the Black Alliance, we saw that independent contractors were left out of federal help, as well as county, and a lot of those independent contractors are like barbers and beauticians who are not mentioned in this, but some of those folks lost everything because they were folks who came in contact with people every day directly as a barber or a beautician, and there was never really real relief for them. So could that also be considered maybe as a seventh item? Or
We could add that, and again, I want to make it clear that these six industries are not all-encompassing. These aren't the only six industries we're willing to consider. So in that instance, we would consider that opportunity to work with that alliance, that Black Alliance, to figure out a way to work with their members in order to help get the funds out to that. So again, I want to make sure that this isn't exclusive to these six industries. We're open to it, and we're happy to work with you if we can come up with a name with that seventh industry. We're happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
So just, and just clarify, because I think that's an important point, these six industries here are the ones moving forward in which came up in the discussion for this contract. However, if there are organizations that represent industries that aren't listed here, they should still come forward, have a discussion with our economic development team, and likely still be able to qualify if they meet the requirements. Is that a good read?
Totally agree, Mayor. Again, these six were primarily chosen because they align with the regional growth plan as well as the city's own economic development priority of industries. But it's, again, not to be all-encompassing.
Good. Okay. I think we just want to hammer that point home, that if there are other organizations or fields that would qualify for this, to know that we all also will take those into consideration, or you all will, the staff. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Scott, just to follow up on a question that Councilmember Tuttle had regarding the award caps and limits. Maybe it's because I'm hungry and I'm thinking breakfast, but $10 million is a lot of sausage. And so what was the consideration for not putting any caps or limits on this? Was there a discussion about that, or I'm seeing the manager shake his head, so.
I'll let the manager take the first crack.
Mayor, Councilmember Fry, yes, we had some discussion, significant discussion about it. I think the concern, especially in the workforce development area, was that we were aware of some projects that had significant dollar requirements, but would also have significant benefits. And we were afraid a cap would limit the success of those projects or also limit your ability to consider those projects. I think we're all aware of one that's probably $1.5 million. There's another that I've heard is that may come to us that's multi-millions. And so we didn't want to cap it. I think we'll take that into account as we bring recommendations forward because I think we want to maximize the benefit of the use of these dollars, and that will be a consideration the council will have to make when you do final allocations.
So to that end, could the panel then recommend a lesser amount than requested? Could that be specified as part of the application process, that you may not get everything you're asking because of other asks that we're getting? Okay.
That could be, yes, absolutely, that could be a consideration.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The other point we wanted to be clear is typically we talk about $5 million in this bucket for workforce and $5 million in small business and entrepreneurial. What we're discussing is not exclusive, meaning if I have 20 great applications for workforce development, we'll probably look at, is there a value of going over the $5 million limit, and maybe because we don't have as many qualified applicants in small business and entrepreneurial. So we're not saying it's 5 and 5. We want to hit the most qualified and effective type of applications.
Great segue to my next question.
Okay.
Because of action that this body took earlier with the vetting process, will these applicants go through the vetting process that we just established?
Yes, and we'll add that to our guidelines.
Thank you. And then final question. It also says that the panel will be created and assigned by the city manager. Will we get to vote on that panel as a council and at least review who those panelists are so that we know who's making those decisions, just like we do with other grant review committees? And so I'm not asking for us to nominate them. I just want to make sure that we have the opportunity to see who they are before they're decided.
I have no problem sharing that information. We've wrestled with this one. It will primarily be staff because of the concerns that Scott expressed on limiting. We don't want to create a conflict of interest. It would be nice, some of the groups that we would love to have their input may also be applying for funds.
Exactly where I was heading. Thank you.
Yep. But there may be some folks, for instance, in the financial institutions that may be able to help us. So.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was hoping to avoid.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bring that back.
Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. Will council as well as the public have access to the applications, or are we only going to have the recommendations from the selection committee?
I don't want to practice law here, but I believe we've determined that the applications will be public record unless there's proprietary information in the application. Is that right?
And then also we look at whether there is financial information of a taxpayer which is prohibited from disclosure. So there are exceptions to what is open, but there is a prohibition under the Kansas Open Records Act for disclosure of the financial information of a taxpayer. So we would have to take a look factually on each application what would be excluded.
Blocking that out or something?
For redaction.
Yep.
Exactly.
Thanks.
All right, further questions for staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? Good morning.
Good morning. Celeste Reset. I should also say I'm a Wichita native, founder of Say Century 2, which is branched into taxpayer issues. We're nonpartisan. I'm glad to hear this discussion about conflict of interest from Councilman Fry and also Bluebaugh on whether the applications can be reviewed. Conflict of interest concerns me, and I wonder if we even have the advisory board up yet. That was formed in April to make sure there were no contracts given or grant funds given to business associates and friends, because that was a problem with the last grant that had been awarded and reported on in the news. So specifically, I want to remind you all that the Ethic Code says council members shall refrain from making decisions involving business associates, customers, clients, friends, and competitors, and shall refrain from using their influence as members of the governing board in attempts to secure contracts, zoning, or other favorable municipal action for friends, customers, clients, immediate family members, or business associates. So I'm reminding you again that several of you ran on ethics, and several of you, in fact, all of you voted for the Ethics Advisory Board, but as last time I saw in City Council, not everybody had their nominations on the board to get it up and running. So I'll start with that question. I'm glad that the applications, I understand with Cora, I don't want to see taxpayer tax information, but I would like to see who were the owners behind the grants that are approved by City Manager Layton, and that seems to be yes, we will get to see that. I don't want to see outdated and inappropriate data used to secure these grants, as has been questioned in the past. And I'm glad to see that there will be a type of auditing oversight. I think that was, thank you, City Manager Layton, for adding that at the end, with the State Recovery Office, I think I got that right, to provide auditing oversight, because a lot can be promised, but what taxpayers want to see with these ARPA funds that are coming out of taxpayer funds from the federal government is whether this money reasonably spent, were the results accurately predicted, and what was the follow-up that occurred afterwards? Did they meet their objectives? Did it really happen? So I want to see follow-up and evaluation of all of these grants approved. $10 million in ARPA funds, sausage to you, Councilmember Fry, but it is a lot of money. And every time you make a decision as city council members, you're spending our money. So it better be fair, impartial, and not benefiting friends or associates when these decisions are made. The last thing I want to say is, again, review for authenticity, updated statistics, not outdated, not from an invalid data collection site. And I would like to know before I close that we do have a full board on the Ethics Advisory Board, and we do have a whistleblower hotline open that is reporting to you. That's my final question to you. Thank you.
And let's touch on one of those items to make perfectly clear. Staff, not council members, are the ones who will be reviewing these applications and making recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct.
And staff has their own ethics policy as well that I think is more inclusive or more detailed than the council policy, and therefore staff also won't be making recommendations for anyone they are personally aligned with.
Mayor, that is correct.
Okay. And if staff recommends something to come to the board or to the body for a vote, at that point, if there is a conflict, then it's proper for a council member to abstain from that vote.
Right, to declare the conflict, correct.
Okay. Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. As to the speaker's topic of appointments to the Ethics Advisory Council, I specifically have not made my appointment to the Ethics Advisory Council or the Ethics Advisory Board because I didn't know if I was going to even be on this body after January, and I don't think it's ethical to appoint someone to an Ethics Advisory Board when I don't even know if I'm going to be here past January. So that is the reason I have not made my appointment to the Ethics Advisory Board, and I will let Councilmember-elect Hoheisel do that when he takes office. Thank you.
Is there further input from the public on this item? I see none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just want to underscore the reason why we're bringing this forward. We've had a lot of discussion about the impact that the pandemic has had on small business and actually on all businesses in the community, either from a workforce standpoint or in terms of ongoing expenses, revenue reductions. And we know that other jurisdictions that have received ARPA funds are moving at a little different pace, and we thought it was important that we do what was necessary to help businesses here in the short term, with the understanding that our partners in the county and hopefully the state through the Spark program will come in with longer term more long-term programs to benefit businesses over a longer period of time, at least through the 2024 period. But I think we all are aware of what the business hardships are today, and that it's important that we assist those businesses before they are forced to make very hard decisions about maybe even their own continuity. So,
Thank you for adding that. And I'll just add that I'm just personally impressed with our staff and with this council, if this is to move forward, with their ability to create a process in which small business organizations, as well as organizations that work in the area of job training, can come and apply for these funds. My understanding is that there isn't, there's different levels of this. We have them at the state level, the county, and then the city level. And we are further ahead when it comes to creating a process for people to access this money than some of these other levels, and thus we can get this money out faster to the people who need it. I also want to compliment staff on creating a matrix so that it will be more data-driven, opposed to just driven off of just presentation. So I think the matrix aspect of this and the point aspects, where each matrix is worth a particular amount of points, adds to this process being more subjective. So I do want to thank staff for not only getting this process going forward quicker than other comparable governments at different levels, but also doing so in a way in which we can retain the integrity of this process by having it more formulaic than I guess based on presentations. So thank you for your work, staff. Is there any further comments on this? If there isn't, then I will go ahead and make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to authorize the allocation of up to $10 million of the city's ARPA CSLFR funds to be used for workforce development and small business / entrepreneurial development grants, and authorize the staff to initiate and coordinate the application process. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open roll. Members shall cast their vote. We have 7 yeas to 0 nays. That motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, I thank you, and we will take that motion and approval to also include the suggestions from the bench on the, I think there were 3 separate items that we need to address. So.
Very well. Madam Clerk.
Resolution authorizing settlement and assignment of the city's claims in opioid litigation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Jennifer Magana, City Attorney. As you heard, this item is a resolution having to do with the settlement of the city's claims against opioid manufacturers and distributors. How we got here, back in 2019, the city issued a request for proposal for representation of the city's claims in cases against opioid manufacturers and distributors. And through that process, a local law firm, Hutton & Hutton of Wichita, who is associated with law firms in Kansas City and San Francisco, Hutton & Hutton was selected as the city's attorney to represent our interest in this case. After that agreement was executed, the city filed a lawsuit against multiple defendants asserting its claims, and soon became one of hundreds of plaintiffs across the country, one of hundreds of municipal plaintiffs across the country, whose cases were then consolidated into national litigation. And this lawsuit is similar to a class action. So that happened in 2019-2020. Last year, this year actually, in the legislative session, the Kansas legislature adopted the Kansas Fights Addiction Act, which creates 2 new state funds to receive monies coming in from the settlements of opioid litigation. And these funds are the Kansas Fights Addiction Fund and the Municipalities Fight Addiction Fund. And these are for the abatement of substance abuse or addiction, and they direct monies to those funds. It also creates the Kansas Fights Addiction Grant Review Board to consider applications for grants to use monies received by the state. During this past period, and some defendants in the national litigation have indicated a willingness to settle the claims against them. However, the the settlement does not agree to provide for direct settlement with all litigating municipalities. In 2021, those defendants that agreed to some settlement were distributors of opioid products during the relevant time frame that gave rise to the claims that resulted in litigation. These defendants have been named as settling distributors, and they are McKesson, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, and Johnson & Johnson. Other opioid defendants, such as manufacturers and pharmacies, are not participating in this particular settlement with the distributors at this time. The settlement amount agreed to by this group, the settling distributors, is approximately, on the national level, $21 billion. And a portion of that total settlement is to be paid out to the states, with incentives included to increase the total payout to each state, depending upon the level of participation by each political subdivision. Under the settlement payout plan, the base amount to be paid to the state of Kansas is approximately $95 million in what's called the Standard Fund, with an additional amount of another $95 million to be called the Maximizing Fund, if full participation of all the political subdivisions, the cities and the counties and the state is achieved. Unfortunately, again, this settlement agreement does not provide for the direct settlement with the cities, such as the city of Wichita, that have filed their own lawsuits, but does require all political subdivisions to enter into agreements with their state's attorneys general to participate and maximize the portions to be allocated. So, same time, there is a memorandum of understanding with the Kansas Attorney General's office that has been uniformly negotiated with all cities and counties. Our lead counsel here with the Hutton & Hutton law firm, Matt Dwyer, represented the city in that matter, worked closely with the Kansas League of Kansas Municipalities, the Kansas Association of Counties, and the AG's office to negotiate the terms of that. The MOU itself contains the terms required to settle these cases, and that includes a waiver and assignment of the city's claims to the Kansas Attorney General's office to handle on our behalf. It does allow Wichita directly to receive 25% per capita increase above the normal distribution of other cities because we are a litigating city, and that was a negotiated provision. Must be signed by January of 2022, so we're bringing this to you today in the form of a resolution that would authorize the execution of the MOU and the settlement distributing documents and all other necessary agreements that need to be signed to effectuate this settlement. This slide is a diagram of the formula that has been worked out, and it shows the two types of settlement agreements. It's based on the settlement guidelines and of the Kansas Fights Addiction Act and the terms of the MOU with the Attorney General's office. So on the left side, it shows the standard funds and the 25% that goes to cities and counties, and then a split between the cities and the counties. It's divided on a per capita basis. And then both funds give 75% to the state, the Kansas Fights Addiction Fund, that was the legislation that was adopted this year. And then in the Maximizing Fund, if we get all participating political subdivisions to agree, then there is the Maximizing Fund. And of that Maximizing Fund, 25% of it goes to cities and counties. And then there's a 50-50 split between cities and counties. And here is where litigating cities get a boost of a 0.25 factor, a multiplying factor. So that is a lot of information, but it's a very clear description of how the funds would be assigned and distributed. Based on these formulas for both the state fund and the Maximizing Fund, the settlement proceeds at this time for this particular settlement are estimated to be, for the city, of $4.3 million over approximately 18 years. Again, this is the settlement with only the distributors. More is expected in other future settlements with other defendants. At the same time, Wichita and other cities can apply to the state to receive grant funding through the Kansas Fights Addiction Grant Fund for other related activities to prevent and reduce and treat the opioid and broadly substance abuse problems in the city of Wichita. It's our recommendation that the city adopt a resolution that authorizes our participation in this memorandum of understanding with the Kansas Attorney General's office and to execute the settlement participation forms with the settling distributors. Again, the city would be assigning its claims of current and potentially future opioid-related claims to the Attorney General's office. All municipalities in Kansas are being presented with this identical MOU and the same resolution. And it is required to maximize our settlement, and the goal is to receive all funds that the city is entitled to. So with that in mind, I would recommend your adoption of the resolution of authorizing the participation in the MOU with the Kansas Attorney General and the execution of settlement participation forms for the settling distributors. Also present here is Matt Dwyer of the Hutton & Hutton firm and our Deputy City Attorney Eric Houghton, who've been working on the resolution of this matter. Here available if you have additional questions or would like further information on this matter.
Is there any questions for staff? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Jennifer, is it also true that we cannot apply for any or take any legal action in the future against opioid companies?
Okay, I'm going to ask Matt to step up and talk a little bit about that as he's worked on this.
Vice Mayor, that would be correct. Under the MOU and House Bill 2079 that was passed by the Kansas legislature, we would be assigning all future claims for any covered conduct as defined by the statute that are against companies in the pharmaceutical supply chain with regards to the opioid epidemic.
Further questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none. We will bring the discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I am very, very reluctantly supportive of this because it seems our hands have been tied and we're forced to do this. And limiting our ability to take future legal action, I think, is wrong, but hence we are here.
Further discussion? Seeing none. With that, I will make the recommendation to accept staff's recommended action to adopt the resolution and authorize all necessary signatures for participating in the MOU and settlement agreement with the settling distributors and authorizing release and assignment of any remaining opioid MDL claims to the Kansas Attorney General and authorize the estimate of a special revenue fund to account for funds received from the settlement.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk, open the roll. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Repair or removal of dangerous and unsafe structures.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members. I'm Kayla Nethercott with MABCD's Neighborhood Inspection Division. We're here today to talk about the property located at 334 North Joanne. It is in District 6. This property is one of 15 cases that were first reviewed by the Board of Code Standards and Appeals on July 12th, 2021, and subsequently reviewed on August 2nd and October 4th. The owner did attend the August 2nd meeting and provided a structural engineer's report that showed the need for a total foundation replacement on this structure. A building permit for this property was obtained on July 9th, 2021, and will expire on January 7th, 2022. No work has been performed. The property has had an open housing case for 2 years and 1 month. As you'll see from the photos, the structure is unsecured with multiple broken windows, has an unstable and cracking foundation, missing wood, rotted trim, missing siding, exterior wood around the doors and windows is very, very deteriorated. This property was placarded as uninhabitable in January of 2020. The premise conditions are unmaintained and include an inoperable dump truck filled with junk, trash, and debris, multiple paint containers, concrete blocks, pallets, auto parts, and tree waste. The last abatement of this property was done in November 2019. The property taxes are current. Let me just scroll through the pictures here. We have about 25 pictures of this one.
Any discussion, or excuse me, any questions for staff? All right, further discussion on this. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak to this or to this property? Welcome.
Hello, Council. My name is Chris Johns. I'm the owner of the property. Yeah, the property is in bad condition, but I have actually begun repairing the foundation. We just started about 2 weeks ago. So we do have some repairs that we have been doing there. Procuring a foundation company was kind of an issue, so we finally have been able to find a company that has been able to come out there and start work on it. So we are aware of the issues, and we are in progress of getting the foundation first repaired.
Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. Okay, so if I understand, the structural engineer's report said that it takes a total foundation replacement. So that's what you're working on?
Yes, correct. We're replacing the entire foundation.
Total replacement. And your building permit expires January 7th?
That sounds correct.
Does that mean that this is for Kaylin, does that mean that the foundation has to be totally repaired by January 7th?
If I may, Chris, have you had any inspections done by our building inspection department yet?
No.
So there's no work inspections that have been performed at this time. We would want to look very closely at the progress to date before any type of extension on a building permit of that kind would be issued, as it has been in place for almost 6 months.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Cirillo.
I have a question for the owner, Mr. Johns. How long have you been the owner?
I've been the owner for a couple years.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion or questions? Is there any more input from the public on this? Seeing none. The other, I guess, the trash and other stuff throughout the property, that seems, is it? Okay. Okay.
Yes, Council, all the trash has been removed, so all the pictures with the trash all around that has been cleaned up.
Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. So I guess my question is, how much time would you need to make sure that we've made the repairs that are needed?
Pending weather, I mean, we've already dug up probably about the back half down to the footings, so we were hoping to have it poured, the back wall, late this week, possibly early next week. So we were hoping to have the foundation repaired within the next 30 days, all replaced.
And the foundation repaired in how much time?
Within the next 30 days.
30 days,
Yeah.
that's what you said?
Yeah,
Okay.
Floor is yours. Oh, 1 minute, we actually have someone jumped in for a question, and then I'll get the floor back to Councilmember Clayco, because this is in District 6. Chair recognizes Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I would ask Kaylin, are you confident that this work can be done in this amount of time? My concerns are, this has been an open case for more than 2 years now, and you said virtually no work has been done in 2 years. I'm just trying to get a feel on whether you understand this work can be done in 30 days.
This is the first interaction we've had with the owner since the August council meeting. So I didn't get a chance to pre-vet that. I'm concerned about the scope of work that's required to bring this property back to a habitable status. And the fact that the good weather has passed. We'll have to verify that the premise conditions have been rectified. If not, we'll take care of that through a nuisance abatement case moving forward. That's a hard question to answer, Councilmember Cirillo. If the contractors perform in a timely manner and they could make this job a priority and they could schedule the inspections as required, obviously foundations are something that we want to take a look at, then yes, it might be possible to get that done in 30 days.
Councilmember Bluebog.
And, yeah, I'm trying to get an idea. How long do you think it's going to take to where it's habitable, to where, you could live in it? I mean, 30 days gets the foundation, but it seems like there's a lot more work after that.
Yeah, I'm just breaking it up into different phases. So I already replaced the roof, so I wanted to make sure, moisture wasn't coming in. So that's already been replaced. So there is a brand new roof on it, or relatively new roof. And then, as far as the interior goes, realistically, we're probably looking at 6 more months for it to be occupiable.
6 months?
Yeah, realistically, with all the trades that need to be done, because it's going to have to be gutted. One side's gutted to the studs, but the other side will have to be gutted to the studs. So all the trades will have to go do their thing, and I'm kind of at their mercy. But 6 months would be the longest I imagine it would take.
Probably a reasonable amount of time for a new build in the same scenario where you're in.
Councilmember Cirillo.
Mr. Johns, do you own any other properties where you have done this type of work?
Yeah, I have about 140 properties throughout between Sedgwick County, Butler, and Harvey, and so I've done a lot of work.
Further questions of staff? Further discussion? See none. Chair recognizes Councilmember Claycomb as this resides in District 6.
Thank you. All right, I would like to extend some time to you, but I think that this probably doesn't need to come back to City Council. If in 90 days the property isn't in a condition where it would not be need to be demolished, then it wouldn't come back to us, and it will be taken care of. So is that enough for a motion? Do I need to make a formal motion, Jennifer? Okay.
Just for clarification, you are would like the motion to extend for 90 days, but if it's not satisfactory within 90 days, then it goes forward with the demolition?
Yes, that's correct.
I think you want to make the motion then to close the public hearing and just hold off the enforcement of the demolition. That's my understanding. So
10
make
and
the
10
motion.
after 90 days if it's not satisfactory, right? 10
Yes.
and 10 after 90. Oh.
So I'll move for, and you can help me, Jennifer, if I'll move for a 90-day extension, and if in 90 days the structure is not satisfactory, then it will not come back to City Council and it will move to demolition.
That's fine.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. We have Councilmember Bluebog on the list, so Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to get a clarification of the definition of what's acceptable 90 days. I don't think it's going to be livable in 90 days.
Right. So I'll add to that it would not qualify for demolition at that point.
We'll work with our building and trades professionals to inspect work that's been completed and to review future permit requests. This one is going to require some individual permitting for trades, I'm confident. So we will be able to evaluate that progress as a department within that 90-day period. We've got the resources to do that.
So just ensuring the footing's been done and the roof's already new and it's it's sealed up, you
It would be
think
nice to
that
have
would?
it secured.
Okay, if all that's done, you think that's acceptable to extend him some time after 90 days?
We'll see how much progress there is.
Okay.
For sure.
Thanks.
All right, well, that motion has been made and seconded. If there's no more discussion or clarifications of the motion, then we'll ask the clerk to open the roll, and members can cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2022-2024 Fraternal Order of Police Union Contract.
Good morning.
Good
again, Mayor
morning.
and Council. Chris Bizricky once again from HR. For your consideration is a tentative labor agreement between the City of Wichita and the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 5. The proposed agreement is for 3 years. It was approved by the FOP membership on December 2nd by a vote of approximately 320 yea and 28 nay. We were before you a week ago and just outlined the same PowerPoint presentation. The agreement is for 3 years. This covers approximately 640 commissioned officers, and the agreement provisions will be incorporated in the revised budget that will come before you. For 2022, it does call for a 4% increase across the board. For the commissioned officers, employees in crime scenes will receive 1.5%. Assistant range masters and a 2.5% performance-based merit for all eligible employees. There will also be a code of conduct standard pay for commission employees, once again, after their third full year of service at a rate of $2 per hour, so that's going up $1. In 2023, the general pay adjustment will be a little more traditional, 1.5%, still including the merit performance-based step, if eligible. There will also be a $1,000 retention bonus for commission police officers. There again, we are seeing a trend of not being able to maintain an active enough workforce, so we're trying to encourage people to stay a bit longer for us and to serve the public. The shift differential pay of 75 cents an hour for people working off the regular shift during the day, that will be rolled into the regular rate of pay. It's rather an administrative headache to keep track of that pay because we do have so many officers that shift around inside the units. In 2024, the general pay adjustment will be 1.5% and 2.5% step for those eligible. The code of conduct pay will increase to a maximum rate of $225 per hour. We will also renew once again, the $1,000 retention bonus for those employees that are eligible after 3 full years. The other contract issues that should be pointed out that would affect everybody would be adding Juneteenth as a holiday, and that would be done in 2022. We are adding the eligibility of an additional well day for people that have not excessively used their sick leave. And the fitness bonus that was raised the other time, there's not a lot of people who are taking advantage of that, and so that would be offset by the 75 cents in the shift differential pay that now everybody will receive. So we would recommend approval of this labor agreement between the city and the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 5.
Are there questions for staff? See none, but stand by. Is there input from the public on this item? We have multiple folks, so we just ask if there are multiple folks when someone starts coming down, just wait until they're done and then you can make your way to the front. We'll, of course, make sure everyone has time to speak, so don't feel like you have to get in line. We can just get through it. Welcome back.
Hi, Ann Jones. West Side, Wichita. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to again ask that you delay the passage of the FOP contract. There have been legitimate concerns raised by both the public and the Citizens Review Board, and instead of taking those concerns seriously, concerns that are life and death situations, Bob has cited a 20-year-old study to justify the policies in this contract regarding personnel file confidentiality. The policy has been called the secret file over the years. It's been used to cover for bad cops and prevent justice to families. It also covers up for sexual harassment and bad employment practices within the WPD. This contract is an embarrassment to the city, and it's an insult to everyone who has worked to make this city a safer place to live for everyone in Wichita. Please don't ignore us again today. No one is asking that these files are open to the public at large, but hiding them from the Citizens Review Board and legitimate requests for production is not an acceptable practice in 2021. I want to bring up a couple examples today. I wasn't going to do this, but I have in the gallery with me today Dominica Finch, the sister of Andrew Finch, who we all know was killed by a WPD officer. In 2 weeks, it'll be 4 years. Despite the public's outcry for consequences and even firing to be done for Officer Rapp, he remains on our force with his AR-15, striking fear in our community. Continues to receive reports of excessive use of force, and he's just a terrible human. But with this policy, again, we would have never found out who Officer Rapp was. And the Fraternal Order Police here today and our HR guy back here continue to protect him, and just ignores the public outcry. And I, for one, am tired of it. But I want to use, you all have heard me talk about that for 4 years now, so I want to use a more recent example. Recently, there was a sergeant that was, that almost received consequences for slapping a female officer on the ass. The sexual harassment consequences that were put into place by our own chief, the chief that we elected, were then overridden by the Fraternal Order of Police and Chris here with HR. Fast forward here to this past November 23rd, when that same officer that received no consequences turns off his body camera and stops a young black man at gunpoint in his car on his way to work early one morning. He cuffs him, he puts him in the back of his car, and then eventually releases him. The only reason that some of you know about this, and I know, is because that young black man was the nephew of a state representative. Everybody, we have to hold them accountable, and this contract does anything but that. We elected and voted in our police chief. We had several candidates. We were able to interview, ask questions, all of that. I don't remember voting in Chris with HR to override our own chief. And now we're on the heels of what I'm afraid is going to happen is we're going to lose our chief, and we're going to be just set up to screw over the next chief we have. Please don't pass this contract. Thank you. And anything I said could be checked by a simple Cora.
So Bob, I do want to ask about the policy regarding, I think the police files that was mentioned. Was that in the old contract? Is that new? What's the, I guess the standard?
Mayor, I think last evening you received an email from Jay Fowler, who is the chair of the Citizen Review Board, that explains the process that we're going through right now to review their work and how we can improve their oversight and accountability and enhance accountability to the public. They came forward with 2 recommendations for consideration. I've had 2 meetings with them. I think Jay has indicated that those are productive conversations. I would agree with that. They have submitted, in our last meeting, they came forward with 3 recommendations on what we could do to enhance the responsibilities of the Citizen Review Board, give them some more oversight, and allow for more public discussion of their findings. And I'm looking at that right now. And we already agreed on one of those reforms already, and there are 2 others that are under consideration. So it's part of a continuing dialogue. I think Jay also clarified, they never intended to have a change in the FOP contract in order to be able to implement this oversight. It was always intended that it would be a change, and one would require an ordinance change by the council in terms of no longer keeping confidential some of their findings and allowing them to report publicly. And then the others would just be procedural changes that they would make in terms of how they investigate cases and pull cases for review.
So this contract, it sounds, if I'm hearing you correctly, the Citizen Review Board is looking at methods to have more oversight and access to, I guess, some of these files. And this contract wouldn't prohibit those discussions moving forward that might lead to possible policy changes or ordinance changes.
That's my understanding, and you have representatives of FOP here. They were at the Citizen Review Board. I'm sure they're willing to discuss their understanding of what we've been doing with the Citizen Review Board.
And just a final question, just about the policy in regards to the files or access to some of these files. Is that policy that comes over from previous practice, or is that new language for today?
That's not new language for today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Further input from the public? Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and other council members. I want to start off by saying, I'm LaWanda DeShazer, 2707 North Terrace. I want to start off by saying that I really do appreciate the conversations that the Racial Profiling Advisory Board has been having with the city manager, we've had with the FOP, and we've also had meetings with the leadership of WPD, and they have been really productive. And I will say publicly that we have made some progress, and I appreciate all the things that we've done. With that being said, please amend the proposed FOP contract to provide more accountability and transparency when WPD officers use excessive force or discharge their weapon. Hiding this information from the residents of Wichita only deepens the distrust and suspicions that the cover-up of these actions is more important than being honest. Law enforcement employment and disciplinary records alleging serious misconduct or use of excessive force by a law enforcement officer should be considered public records and not protected from disclosure by Cora unless disclosure of such records are otherwise restricted or prohibited by law. 2020 was the summer of protest across the country. Citizens were demanding change. I commend again WPD for making some changes to policies and procedures, but we can do more. During the protests and talks here in Wichita, it was consistently stated that we are not those other cities. So let's put some other measures into place to make sure that we are not those other cities. I've seen some things on Facebook recently. I don't know if it's the same incident that was just talked about, but I've seen the incidents. A mom went live when her son was pulled over by the police. She showed up asking questions. She was talked to in a very rude manner. She was just told to stay away. It was a bad look, right? And then the young man was let go. But it was a process, and it was a very bad look, and those are the things that we're talking about. Again, some good changes have been made, talking about the use of force, that we won't do chokeholds. But then there's a caveat that says, unless the officer feels his life is in danger, so that says we will still do chokeholds. And so we're just asking that last summer not be forgotten. Right? Let's make sure Wichita is not those other cities. I'm sure other people may say we already are those cities, but I want us to keep making sure our police department is staying progressive and doing the things to ensure that the citizens feel comfortable with our WPD, our police department. Again, I appreciate all the talks that we've had, and I'm certain that we can just do a little bit better. Thank you.
So with the talks moving forward when it comes to, I guess, access to citizen review boards who have more oversight, I think that was a concern with the previous speaker. Those conversations and policy changes can be ongoing regardless of this contract.
That's correct, and we've committed to do that.
Okay, I just want to, because we've had two speakers who had similar issues, I want to hammer the point that I think you're making, that we can still continue those conversations if this is to pass without being amended.
That is correct.
Next speaker.
Good morning. I appreciate the comments that were made about the Citizens Review Board because I'm a former auditor and I think it's important that we provide proper oversight for everybody's actions. So now I'm going to ask another question about actions. There was a police officer, Atterburn, who had been severely injured. He was a 25-year veteran of our Wichita Police Force. And as you know, it was in the news that a $75 million lawsuit was just settled against Eddie's Chevrolet Cadillac, Brandon Stephen Motors, for $75 million. So here's what I want to say about that. Brandon Stephen is owner of Eddie's Chevrolet Cadillac. He is also the owner of Brandon Stephen Motors. An employee of Eddie's Chevrolet Cadillac was frustrated that management wouldn't allow her to report the missing Tahoe as stolen, despite multiple calls about the vehicle. Evidence was provided in the lawsuit that a member of the Stephen family had known the Tahoe was used by the criminal Tarajas for 7 weeks before the 25-year police officer, Brian Atterburn, suffered catastrophic injuries in a high-speed chase in February 2017. Rodney Stephen was included in the lawsuit. Hutton and Hutton Law Firm sued Eddie's Chevrolet Cadillac LLC, Moxine Motors LLC, Stephen Enterprises LLC, and Brandon Stephen Motors LLC, and a settlement was recently reached for his family. He can no longer return to the force. His wife is trying to take care of his medical expenses and damages. This is an example of people in the community, the Stephen family, who knew this vehicle was missing. It was used to transport suspected prostitutes to the Kansas Star Casino, and nobody did anything in that family to stop the effect on this police officer's life. Brandon Stephen has a criminal record related to gambling. What astounds me is the influence his family has with you all. He has a contract currently with the Wichita Ice Rink Center, and as we know, you've heard speakers complain about how run down that facility is. They've sent emails to numerous of you on city council, and nothing was done about the money they were supposed to spend to fix it up. So I'm hoping we'll have a change in January with the management of the Wichita Ice Rink. He's also made campaign contributions to several of you on city council, which I find so astounding. In the recent city council campaign in November, I looked at the filings with the Sedgwick County Election Committee, and both Rodney and Brandon Stephen contributed mightily to one of the city council district campaign, and they were reelected. And I'm stunned that this money is accepted from these criminals. I'm stunned we do business with these criminals. So my suggestion today is there are both sides of the issue with the police contract, and I hear both sides, and I know there's both sides because we're humans. But why are we dealing with individuals who have criminal backgrounds that have injured our policemen, and yet we do business with them? So the suggestion I would make is, number one, don't accept their campaign contributions. And number two, in the RFP process, don't accept a bid or a contract for someone who has a criminal background to run our public facilities. It's a simple request. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Normally I wouldn't chime in, but any assertion that a campaign contribution has any impact or effect on any way that I vote is utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. I answer to the voters of District 1. I am speaking because, and no offense, but of the elections, I was reelected, so it was about me. But that is utterly ridiculous that that assertion is even being made. Anyone who knows me know I cannot be influenced in any way, shape, or form by any dollar amount, contribution, any of that. So I just wanted to say on the record, it's ridiculous to make any assertion like that about me, and I reject it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you. I would agree with the Vice Mayor, and I would also say it's ridiculous that the Speaker continues to go on social media and perpetuate a false narrative about certain candidates, myself included. I don't appreciate that because it's absolutely false. No amount of money could ever buy my vote. My campaign did accept money from the Stevens, but I didn't even know until it was pointed out to me. I would second the Vice Mayor's assertions that campaign contribution has any influence over my vote, because it doesn't. Thank you.
Further input from the public.
Pardon?
Are you able to pass this out to the council?
Sure.
Council, it's a pleasure to be with you today. We're mixing apples and oranges, obviously, so I'm not going to try to comment on the previous conversation, but I am here to be very specific that we are very concerned about the contract as it's currently written. You are in a position to give about $9 million to the officers in our department. And I'm not sure where that money's coming from, but it wasn't in your budget, which you just approved in August. And I'm not sure how we justify it. We've had $10 million already since 2016 given to the police department, and now another 9, that's $19 million bucks. We have people on the street, homeless, mental health issues, drug addiction, whatever, and now they can't pay their rent, they're on the street. So we have a disproportionate amount of money being spent, if you will, to try to entice officers to stay on the job. $1,000 bonus if you just stay around, and we're going to give you another $1,000 each year. I would really be concerned about that, and I hope that you are as well. Why do we have to pay people to stay employed and help protect and serve our citizens? But the real issue for us, and I say us as the Racial Profiling Advisory Board, I've been working on this issue for 23 years, started back in '98. And we have tried repeatedly through all these years to have more transparency and accountability for our police department. And even with the new chief, his efforts have been stymied many times by this contract. The way in which this contract is written in Articles 13 and 14, it makes it almost impossible for the chief specifically and the command staff to hold some of these officers accountable. And many times we have found that they have used a procedure of not even reporting the incident. It doesn't get into the electronic filing. It's out of sight, out of mind. Now, somebody brought up the point about the young man, Andrew Finch was his name, I believe, shot and killed within 3 seconds. The officer that pulled that trigger, Justin Rapp, the police department was told, do not reveal this man's name. Don't say anything about who pulled the trigger. So here we have a man that's killed on his front porch. The officers in front of him did not have their guns out. They didn't see him as a threat. But Rapp decided he was going to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner within 3 seconds. Now, why not release that information to the public? Why is that held? Why would we suggest that the Citizens Review Board that Bob has appointed, they're not representative of you, they're not representative of the community, they're representative of whoever Bob decides to put on that board. They don't get to see a case until it's already decided. It takes a year or two for these investigations to take place. In the meantime, you have a festering wound. You have people in the community who know who beat that person to a pulp at a stop. They know who pulled the trigger. You have Akarius Randolph in 2015. That case, the man was having PTSD. He was trying to get some help. His parents, his mom called for ComCare. And who shows up? It's an officer said, I'm going to say, look, you can just calm down, bud. And he steps right up into him. And he feels, quote, threatened, so he pulls his gun out and shoots him in front of 19 members of his family. That case is still not resolved. 19 members of that family going through trauma still. They have had no counseling, no support from the city. It's out of sight, out of mind. Here, that's 2015. Here we are almost in 2022. So Articles 13 and 14 of this contract make it almost impossible for any of us to know, you, us, anyone else in the community, who is responsible for this behavior. Now, it's a double standard, isn't it? If you or I have a traffic ticket, or if we're accused of a crime, it's public knowledge immediately, isn't it? It comes on the news, it's in the Wichita Eagle. Everybody under the sun knows, oh, that person did such and such, at least they're accused of it. But we don't do that with our officers, do we? They get to hide behind a blue wall of silence. Now, there's nothing in Kansas statute that prohibits that information from being shared. We've checked the statute. Brandon, I'm sure as a legislator, you would know that as well. And what we have now is a process where this contract, we started in March, trying to have some input. We've had some meetings, it's all nice and friendly, everybody's smiling, and nothing happened. Not one suggestion that we've made has come forward in this contract. We don't see any of it. So it's okay to go through a process, but if you're just playing along and how's that supposed to work? How's that supposed to be credible at all? If you're coming out to approve this today, we didn't see the contract until last Tuesday. We'd asked to see it in the process, like you would with legislation. If you're a legislator in the state of Topeka, you have a bill that's introduced. It's put on the web. You have hearings. You have an opportunity for people to come and testify. That hasn't been done in this case at all. So we have two recommendations for you. These are ones that we took from the Citizen Review Board, and I've shared it with you in email. You have it in front of you now as a printed copy. We're asking that you have the City Council amend the FOP contract, send it back for a vote among the members of the FOP, and bring it back on the 21st when you have another meeting. But it is to do this: law enforcement employment and disciplinary records alleging serious misconduct or use of excessive force by a law enforcement officer be considered public record. That's pretty simple. Transparency, accountability. Put it in the contract. So they can no longer say, well, it's COP and we're not going to have any more opportunities for you to address this issue because it's in our contract. We can just brush it aside. You'll never know. Now, the second recommendation is that for grievances and arbitration procedures, those to be conducted pursuant to Article 14 of the FOP contract or its equivalent to be considered matters of public record. I ask that you please amend this contract take it very serious. We have a real need in this country for healing. The recommendations that Bob brought forward at the meeting we had with the city council or with the Citizen Review Board were from 2001, is that correct? So that's 20 years ago. We have cities all over this country that have made major changes in how they provide for transparency. And it's really a healing process. It helps us tremendously. So I ask you, Mr. Mayor and the council, would you please amend this today, send it back for a quick ratification vote on the part of the FOP, and let's make this right. Thank you very much. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
So you're referring to section 13 and section 14?
Articles 14, I think, would be the best place for that to happen. You can work with the law department and the city manager to insert it. But the general recommendations, now the Citizen Review Board has discussed this repeatedly in August and September and again in December. So it's not new. They've tried to come forward. What we're asking the city manager to do is please allow this to take place. Let's not have this extended any longer. The veil of secrecy needs to stop.
You talk about Article 14, not Section 13 and 14.
It's Article 14 in the contract, I believe, isn't it?
Well, there's a Section 13 and 14, and then there's Article 14.
Okay.
So I got the contract. I'm trying to see exactly what you're referencing. Section 13 and 14 is just
13 deals with discipline and 14 deals with termination.
It just seems, okay, so section 13, if that's what we're talking about, states, the city and the FOP agree that for purposes of disciplinary actions, reprimands, suspensions, and terminations, the official file shall be maintained by the Human Resources Department. That's all section 13 says. Is there something in this that, am I reading the right section?
Yeah, so maintain if you're maintaining it in the Human Resources Department, no one else gets to see it. It should be open to the media. Who pulled the trigger? Who killed Andrew Finch? Who shot Akarius Randolph? Those are pretty serious concerns, aren't they? Why should we have this whole community up in an uproar because we have a veil of secrecy? So did I answer your questions correctly? Or to insert it, that'll be up to you and the city attorney, I think, to figure out.
I'm just trying to understand. So this doesn't say anything about, it's maintaining the record by Human Resource Department. It's not, I don't know where else we would put that file. Like there's nothing in section 13 I think suggests that the information is to be denied.
It is.
I don't understand. I mean, it's the Human Resource Department. What department should we keep this file if not Human Resource? Because all this section says is that the files will go to the Human Resource Department. So
Yeah, and it's redacted. When they get it with the Citizen Review Board, all the names are taken out. You don't even have the person who filed the complaint, the person that was abused, if you will, at the stop. They don't ever get to come and speak. It's all one-sided.
Okay, so then I think I now understand what you're saying. It's not who maintains the file, it's access to the file.
It's access to the file.
Okay.
And that would be a Freedom of Information request, if you will, if it's nothing other. They've always said in the past, well, the contract won't allow it. That blue wall of silence needs to come down. We need to be open with each other, don't we?
Okay. Is there I got a couple people on the board, so let's go with Councilmember Bluebock.
Thank you, Mayor. And in both of these recommendations, while it's got in here, as otherwise restricted or prohibited by law, and I just want to know, Jennifer, could you clarify what is restricted or prohibited by law?
What comes to mind is the Kansas Open Records Act. And the Kansas Open Record Act says that records are presumed open except for certain categories. Personnel records is one of those categories. It is not subject to mandatory disclosure.
But it is not restricted. When you read the law, and she will hopefully clarify that for you, it is very specific in saying it does not prohibit the information exchange. And this is what we're asking for. Make sure it's in the contract, that we don't use that as an excuse and say you can't see it because, well, it's not our contract. Do you follow me? Okay.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have a question for the speaker. Bob, the speaker mentioned that they didn't get this until last Tuesday. Did you not send an email prior to last Tuesday and then follow up on that? Were any of their recommendations added into the contract?
First of all, that is true. I sent an email out in advance of this being posted a week ago Friday.
So it would have been like a week and a half ago.
That would be correct. And I do have record of that email being sent. So, and I also, if you remember in the council report, referenced their recommendation that this be held for 2 meetings so that there'd be the public would have an opportunity to see the contract in advance. That was one of their recommendations, to have early conversations. There are there's a long list of recommendations that I've received from the racial profiling group. We have addressed many of those. When it comes to this contract, the issues of dispute we've had are primarily around what is in front of you today. It was in different language. They have taken what was a discussion piece by the Citizen Review Board and brought it forward as to be included in the contract, which again was never the intention of the Citizen Review Board. But what we have to, at one point, they suggested that all the disciplinary issues in the contract be taken out. And so that Articles 13 and 14 would be removed from the contract, which was not practical. I've said from the very beginning that there's a due process that's established there that frankly, it goes to a greater degree than any other contract that we have, and greater than any other employee group that we have. And I have never felt hamstrung by that process or felt that it gave undue influence to FOP as the representative of our employees. But our employees are entitled to due process, just as the city is entitled to protect management rights and make sure that both sides are well represented in the process. So that, I think Walt is correct in that we had a disagreement on this. Where I would challenge him is I made it clear in multiple meetings that this issue was, that I wasn't behind this issue. I did not support it. And that instead I wanted to work with the Citizen Review Board, which is the duly designated group to work on transparency and accountability in our police department. And as I said, we've had some, I think, very good discussions. Some of the issues we've talked about is providing more information to the board regarding past actions with an officer. So anytime they consider a case, the first thing that we'll let them know, or one of the first things we'll let them know, is what the past experience has been. If there's an excessive use of force allegation that's been made, we'll then indicate to that board whether or not there have been previous actions or allegations of that nature. But it's the same with other issues that would be in front of them. And as I mentioned to you, they would like to be able to go public with their findings in some cases, and we're talking about that would require an ordinance change, so the council would weigh in on that. I apologize, I can't remember the third item, but again, I believe the Citizen Review Board is very serious about this issue and about making sure that they are the citizens' voice as we review the actions of the police department. And in all of my discussions with the board and with FOP, I haven't heard any objection to that layer of accountability and moving forward. And so I disagree with the way this is presented to you. It's not the way it was intended, but the intention is still to allow for more citizen accountability, or the demand for accountability in terms of what we do as a city and with our police department.
Thanks.
If I may respond.
Walt, you're sure, but your time's up, but go ahead.
Thank you very much. You know, it's great, Bob, that you are sharing all this, but the fact is that Citizen Review Board has been existing for 3.5 years. To our knowledge, not one recommendation has been implemented. And when they do look at cases, it's all in executive session. All the names are redacted. None of the complainants who actually were impacted by the stop are invited to testify. You only get one side of the story. And so the public never knows who it was that they were looking into, what incident, what kind of recommendation they may or may not have had. It's all secret. They come back into general session and they close the meeting. That's not transparency and it's not accountability. So this idea that we have a citizen review board is not real. You do not have any review per se that the rest of us as citizens know anything about. And we've had case after case where this has come up, and you've had people on the street say, my God, why is it that this is continuing? And right now you have an opportunity in this contract to say, look, we're going to have some transparency. We're going to at least do that much. Now, whether anything else will happen is a whole different thing. But to say we got something on a Friday before you saw it on a Tuesday and talked about it, that's kind of a straining at gnats, because we didn't have any input to that final contract. We've asked since August, September, October, please, let's all sit down and figure out what might come forward. Didn't happen. So we get 1 week to come forward. We have just today to make our case. This isn't any way to make decisions. Please amend this with the specific language that the review board had considered and send it back. It'll be a quick process. We can come back on the 21st and you'll have it make sense. Thank you. Anybody else? Question?
Thank you, Walt.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Of course. Appreciate you being here. Mr. Manager, the other section in question is section 14, due process hearing. Due process hearing will be allowed for major discipline of 4 or more days. This is a voluntary hearing that the employee may or may not attend without further discipline. Employee is allowed to state mitigating facts to the chief of police or designate on why discipline should not be imposed. Hearings will be recorded and placed into the official record. So section 14 is just saying that if you're accused of something wrong, you have an opportunity to present facts that could clear you from what the wrongful, not just accusation, but I think this is the disciplinary action. Can you describe to people who might not know how that process works, what is that process? Who's on the board? How does that work? My understanding is about 3 people on that, and Chris is making his way to the podium, but can we get some light, I guess, on what section 14 actually looks like, since it's something that's come up for a while?
I'll give you my basic understanding and then be corrected if I stray. This is a due process hearing. It's not a grievance hearing, which does have, if it reaches a certain point, actually has a panel that serves, and there's a process for selecting members of that panel. But this is one, as I understand it, where the employee is entitled to appear in front of the appropriate supervisor, along with representation for that employee if they choose to have representation. And they are then entitled to make their case regarding the allegations that have been leveled against them regarding some type of inappropriate activity. It's after that hearing and the evidence that's presented in that hearing that then ultimately the chief will make the decision on the disciplinary action.
Chris, do you have anything to add, or is that? Yes. Good. Okay. All right, more public input. Welcome.
Honorable members of the council, I'm Hans Asmussen from the FOP, the current vice president. I wanted to give a little brief history on the relationship between the FOP and the city. That we've been bargaining for about 4 decades now, and I've been part of the contract negotiation process for about 15 years. So I'm the longest standing member of the FOP in a continual negotiation process. And through suggestions by City Manager Layton, we had switched our method of negotiations from the traditional style, where it's kind of like back and forth salvos at each other with what we think the contract should be in total, to what's called interest-based bargaining. Okay? And in that process, it's collaborative. We work together by identifying problems we see, and then we work by finding what is the root cause of that problem, and then what is the best solution to fix that problem. And then once we come up with that, we put information, it'll either be in the contract, or we may come up with ideas for policies to fix that. We find out what the real problem is and we fix it. And that's how we've been negotiating for several contracts now. And so in this process, in that room, we have, of course, members of the FOP, and then we also have representatives from Human Resources, we have representatives from the command staff of the police department, and whenever we're talking financials, then we have someone from the finance department there to come work through this. So everything that has ever been placed in Articles 13 and 14 is through a collaborative effort. There was language in there prior to interest-based bargaining, but since that time, we really looked into it and decided what things make the process easier for management to be able to investigate allegations of misconduct and then mete out discipline when it's appropriate. And in one of those was it's almost a waiver of some rights that came from the labor side. Is you'll see in Article 13 where it was through management and the union working together before a session a few contracts back, and we came up with an idea of what's called stipulation of discipline on the lower discipline levels of investigation. So before even the investigation starts, so there's an allegation that an officer was rude to a citizen. And the officer can come in and before even doing an investigation can say, you know what, I'll stipulate to that discipline. I wasn't having my best day. Yeah, I can see I was rude. I'll take my written reprimand or my day of suspension, whatever that appropriate matrix slot is for the discipline. They just come in and say, I did it, hand me my discipline. We can move on down the road. Then the department doesn't have to go through all the steps of an investigation. So that came through this collaborative process. So I want to also reiterate, because Mr. Layton did talk about how Articles 13 and 14 has to do with due process. Article 13 is really laying out what is needed for the department to issue discipline for just cause. Okay, it's a guide that makes sure that when they are issuing their discipline, when they followed all those steps, then the disciplines should be upheld because the steps were followed. So just like how policies always have a name for someone who did something, sometimes that's how contract language happens. Or some incident happened, so we have to put it in the contract so everyone understands you've got to do these certain steps to make sure that it's done appropriately. I do want to mention that if the council was to make some kind of amendment to the tentative agreement that is already before you, it's not a simple process like the previous speaker said. It doesn't go straight back to the FOP for a vote. It opens up negotiations. Okay, we're at a tentative agreement. If a change is going to be made by one side that they want to put forward, then it opens up negotiations again, and we have to commence negotiations. And then it's either to another tentative agreement or it goes to an impasse, which then has other mechanism has to have. So it's not a simple process. Our belief is that you should trust on your negotiations team, that they worked with us to craft this tentative agreement that is before you, and we ask that you vote in favor of it. And I stand for any questions.
Got a couple on the board for questions. Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Hans, for your part in the negotiation and your leadership team. I know you've been part of these contract negotiations for a long time. As I'm sure you do, I respect the concerns of our review boards. I respect the concerns of our citizens who have brought up very legitimate concerns. But my question to you, do you believe any part of this contract upholds a veil of secrecy or protects bad cops. Do you believe that?
No, I do not.
Tell me why.
Because if the department was covering up for bad cops, then why would the FOP really need to exist as a representative for disciplinary actions, right? The department is very straightforward and shows the data of the investigations, the complaints that are lodged, and when you look at that data, the bulk of complaints that our Professional Standards Bureau investigates come internally. So it's either through supervisors seeing something and lodging a complaint, or it's from fellow officers, the peers of someone, seeing something and then telling a supervisor to lodge a complaint. So the contract does not limit discipline to be handed out when it's appropriate. All it is making sure that the discipline is for just cause, which in the statute for PIRA, it uses the term proper cause, says the management can discipline for proper cause. That is synonymous with just cause. I don't know why the legislature chose that word, but the courts have ruled that it's the same thing, and so just cause needs to be met in discipline. That's all that the contract does, is just make sure that the discipline is for just cause.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple questions for you. Appreciate you being here. Have you seen this sheet with the recommendations from the Racial Profiling Board?
I've probably seen an iteration of some of that in the past.
Okay. Do you agree with those recommendations? And
I don't
why
have
or
the
why
sheet in
not?
front of me. I'd have to see what's on it right now. Because I can tell you, we've met with the Racial Profiling Advisory Board on 2 occasions to go over what their concerns are. And then in one instance, some representatives from the NAACP were there also. So I've seen several of their issues that they have, and they were lengthy meetings, very friendly meetings, and they explain their concerns, and we explain the reasons why information or certain contract provisions are in there. But I mean, I'd gladly look at what it is that was handed to you, and I could give my opinion on it.
I can give it to you, or LaWanda has a copy back there. I just want to know, these 2 things really are looking at transparency. So I just wanted to know your initial thoughts on if it's something that you felt was good or not, and just kind of the why behind it.
So I do not agree that the personnel records should be considered as public records. Personnel records are confidential by their nature. In the state of Kansas, they're confidential. And the FOP is not in favor of creating second-class employees by having our members have their personnel records open to the public when other personnel working for the city, theirs is not. About transparency. So transparency is it's kind of a nebulous term. What is transparency? So if I ask someone, well, what is transparency? A lot of people are going to give different answers. If you were talking about, so you have allegations of serious misconduct. Again, what does that mean? What is serious misconduct? Use of excessive force. So if force is truly excessive, okay, if it's truly excessive, then it's going to be looked at criminally, okay? And our department has, and working with us, and it was one of our suggestions, is to have criminal investigations of our employees done by an outside law enforcement agency, right, for transparency. So another law enforcement agency would then look at that, okay, and if charges are filed, that is all open record. When a person is charged, it's an open record. If they're a suspect, it's not open record, right? So if an officer got charged for battery, aggravated battery, any of the criminal charges that could arise from the term excessive force, once they're charged, that is the same as being arrested, right? So that becomes an open record at that point. And then the proceedings, the court proceedings, anything at least that's not being sealed by the bench is going to be open for public record also. The second suggestion, the arbitration proceedings, that is something we'd be willing to look at with certain protections that would be there. So what is it that are we trying to be for transparency? Are we reviewing an individual person, or are we reviewing actions, right? So if it's just actions is what we're trying to review, then we can redact out names that are in there. Sometimes, and this is how we do it right now. So if part of the arbitration has to do where the FOP is saying there has been disparate treatment, right, to the employee that is grieving, well, we have to bring in the files of other discipline that's been handed, but we redact out the names of those employees because we don't need the names of the employees, right? What we need to see is the actions that were taken, and are the actions that the department is doing, are they disparate? So to us, it falls along in the same lines. If we're going to ever get to a point where we're going to have our arbitration, the rulings made by the grievance hearing board, for those to be open, more than likely we would have an ask in there to redact out names, because there's going to be some people's names that could, by testimony, be said as part of it that aren't part of the actual process itself, but they're brought into it, so to have names redacted. Because again, the transparency is trying to see what happened, what did the department do, and then now what's the ruling on whether appropriate or not appropriate.
Well, I appreciate you being open to one of those in your explanation. The only other point, and I don't know if this is question or comment, but when you mentioned the collaborative process, two groups that you didn't mention, although you visited, was the NAACP and the Racial Profiling Board. So they weren't collaborating with you on the creation of this contract. You just went and heard from them. And I just wonder if you understand, and I'm not knocking our department. I think we've done some wonderful things, especially in the last couple of years. But if you understand that folks just feel left out in that process, because if you complain about an officer today, per policy right now, you'll never know if there's discipline handed to that officer. Internally, even we don't always know. That's kind of between the manager, Chris, and the chief. And many in the community just want to know that they were heard and something happened. And it just seems that I think the perception is these two items don't allow that to happen. And that's kind of been the concern. That was the concern, I think, last year. And specifically to what you said earlier, if you were looking at an officer did something wrong, let's say excessive force by knees in the back, batons on someone who really wasn't resisting to the way that maybe it was said they were. And this officer had a history of internal concerns of excessive force or racial issues or more serious misconduct, not coming in late or missing a document in the file. Community would want to know that, because that might say something more about that officer, not necessarily reflect a negative on the department, but if the specific officer had a history of that, I think that's what these groups are getting at. And prior to me being in office, me too, as an activist, that was one thing that I wanted to know. I know it's been an internal discussion, but I think that's the genesis of where these requested changes are coming from.
So speaking towards when a citizen files a complaint against a law enforcement officer, our understanding is that at the conclusion of that investigation, and I don't know if it happens before the discipline is issued to the officer or if it's after, but no matter what the outcome, there used to be 4 findings of an investigation, and now the department has broadened that a little bit to explain some more things that happen kind of in between the lines on them. So they've expanded it a little bit. But notice goes out to the complainant, letting them know what was the finding. Okay, well, if the finding is sustained, right, sustained is where the employee gets disciplined. The other 3, they're not being disciplined. But under sustained, the employee is being disciplined. So when a citizen gets that reply, that response back from the department about their complaint, and it is marked sustained, the employee is being disciplined. Now, I don't know if it shows on their code levels which the policy and procedures manual and the regulations manual is open. It's on the city's website, right? And when you look at the regulations, that's what, if I'm going to be disciplined, it's for a regulation that I violate. And in the regulations, you have a regulation number, then you have a letter. That letter is a code letter that goes to a discipline matrix that is also listed there. So if it's B, then you go to the matrix and you look at B, and you can see what the discipline range is. And so the citizen could surmise that under a B, which is a written reprimand to a day off, I either got a written reprimand or I got a day off for being sustained for that violation.
That makes sense. I know Bob wants to jump in, but one last thing. So Racial Profiling Board has consistently said that none of the filings have been sustained, which is kind of where the community's like, we talked about this incident, but we're not seeing anything sustained, and it's never on the officer. In that same sense, I just think, again, where the policy is just, if it's not sustained and the citizen continues to say it, and then there's no, if an officer continues to have, I guess, these claims, but they're not sustained, and then the citizens can never hear about it because these files are closed. I mean, again, I think it's just getting to the deeper aspect.
Right, so you're specifically talking about a complaint of racial profiling. Am I hearing you correctly?
And part of that is, I know Chief Ramsey's changed this, but prior, and where I was really focused is, there was also a policy of just writing a ticket. So things would not be sustained because it was a warranted ticket. If your traffic light was out and you got pulled over and it really wasn't because of that, but the officer wrote the ticket, it was a justifiable ticket. And that was the defense that was used, even though disproportionately there were people of color being pulled over. And that was kind of the pushback at the time. I know that that's changed quite a bit, and we've seen the number of those tickets going down, and policy is not to do that anymore, but that was kind of what was happening before. So if an officer continued to have these allegations of racial profiling, but they were actually writing tickets, it was all justified. The community would never know that that officer was continuing to pull over people of color, if that makes sense.
Right, because the officer was never sustained for any violation, correct?
Because they wrote a ticket. So I think what the groups are saying is they just want to know the history of that with a specific officer. If that excessive force happened or racial profiling happened, if there were 13 allegations against this one officer, and each one you begin to find a trend of didn't signal at 100 feet or headlight or tail light out, then you begin to wonder why those small things and why this certain group of people. But you can't get that history, assumedly because of this policy.
I understand where they're concerned, okay? I understand that, but I will counter with that the number of allegations being made against someone does not go towards the truth of whether that's really happening. Because we could all in here go file a complaint against Detective Inklar, right? Our president of the FOP. We could all just file complaints, right? And all of a sudden it would show within, a month's time where he had X number of complaints. But how many of them are valid complaints? So just using, statistically, it's not good to be using that. But I understand the feeling that someone feels that they are being targeted. But we have to understand that there's a difference between what's really happening and what's felt, because we're humans, and so we read into things that may not be there or that could be there. I give that. But just opening up to, Detective Asmussen has X number of complaints that have been filed against him, that doesn't truly speak to me or about me, because our traffic officers, typically the ones that have the vast majority of complaints against them, and it's mostly from people thinking that if I file a complaint, then I can get out of my ticket, right? And so they file these complaint after complaint after complaint are filed against them when they are very, very good employees that, because of now with the body cameras, we get to see exactly what it was, how they were interacting. And then the camera does have a buffer to it of 30 seconds. So when they turn it on, it goes backwards and it's captured it just like your DVR at home has been doing. So we're able to see that more and more now of what the true interactions are. And we'd see on traffic stops what it is that the officers saw. Right? If there's a violation, they pulled them over and they cited for that same violation.
Bob.
But thank you for your question.
A lot of work has occurred in the last year regarding some of the issues that you bring up, and I want to talk about that just a little bit. First of all, the Racial Profiling Advisory Board had the same concern regarding the communications with residents after their complaint was reviewed. So they have suggested a language for the multiple levels of letters or notifications that we provide to residents. The department has adopted that language, and in the future, those letters will reflect the recommendations of the advisory board. So that's one reform. Second, that I've talked to the Citizen Review Board about at our most recent meeting is, if you get a letter and let's say a complaint is not sustained, you have the right to submit a complaint to the Citizen Review Board and ask for that matter to be reviewed by the board. That's probably not been publicized well enough, and that's something that we're going to work on. The other thing which was the third item of reform I forgot, was that when they do review a case now based on a complaint, or if they pull one off that they think is important enough where they want to hear from the resident, they will notify the resident that was involved. And so now the Citizen Review Board will hear from that person before they make any kind of determination. So you'll have the police report and what's been done by the Professional Standards Board, the chief's resolution of the case, but now you also hear from the resident before they would weigh in. And then, as I indicated, again, I think because of this concern about transparency, they would like that council to consider an ordinance change that would allow for them to make a public record of what they find. So cases can come to them from residents, they can pull cases themselves, or the department or the chief can then present cases. So again, the idea is to try to get as many touch points, and especially to get those residents to be able to have independent eyes on cases. The only other thing, I hesitate to bring this up because we've not had any kind of robust discussion about this, but there has been some discussion about how does somebody get on the Citizen Review Board. And I think when we bring an ordinance change to you on the reporting, the council may want to have a discussion about, is there a voice for the council in the selection of people on the Citizen Review Board, or are there other ways to make sure that we've got, your representation on that board?
Thanks, Bob. I guess I was going to wait on this one. So on that, since the ask is that we amend today, what is the timeline on those two ordinances you mentioned? Thinking 60, 90, 80 days?
Yeah, probably. I would say, I think that's about the right time, 60, 90 days. I'll meet again with the board probably in January. We'll try to finalize their expectations. What I asked them towards the end of the last meeting is, what's standing in your way from accomplishing the kind of work that you want? And they're pretty serious about what they're doing, and I think one of them said, I didn't come here just to review a case or two and then move on. They want to have a meaningful role in all of this. So we're going to talk again about that in January, and then if we can reach agreement on concept and where we go forward, then I think the ordinance would come probably in February or March.
Thank you.
And I appreciate we're talking about policy, which is separate than a contract. And I do want to keep us focused. An employment contract is not all encompassing of policing policy. We've had more reform in the last 2 years, and I think the last 10 years, or 5 years maybe. I know we've had quite a bit because of the input of the community and folks looking towards ensuring that we have the best police department we can have. Now, as we move forward with those ordinances, I think we can all have a discussion, hopefully in the beginning of the year, about how to add folks from the policy side, or rather that's an appointment to the board, or to maybe create a subcommittee with some members of other boards, like our diversity board on that as well. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, but I do just want to refocus the conversation on the employment contract today, not on overarching, I think, policing policy, which is something that we can continue to reform and work towards beyond today. So with that, I really appreciate the explanation of in reflections of some of these changes that are considered, and I think that these changes can still be in play with a deeper policy discussion in the future as we look towards our ordinances. Further public input. Well, you already spoke twice, so we can't let you come back up here and speak 3 times. You spoke twice already. The rules are you're supposed to only speak once. We gave you grace to speak another time. Having you come up a 3rd time, I'm outside my decorum at that point. Apologize. Any further input from other folks? All right, if not, we'll bring discussion back to the benches to further discussion on these items. Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one question. Bob, is there anything in this contract that would stop any of the work that we've discussed today from going forward?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. What Hans had indicated earlier about, they would like to retract the names of any of our reports. So it would be a policy change of releasing the reports. When we do release, or when we're forced to release, we usually retract the names anyway. So that, I could see that continuing to be a discussion point there. But the actions themselves in releasing those and being as transparent as we can, that is a policy decision.
Thank you.
Further discussion from the bench. All right, if there's no further discussion, then now make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the proposed 2022-2024 memorandum of agreement between the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 5 and the City of Wichita.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. And Bob, we would ask that, I believe it's the will of the council, that we would move forward with some of these policy discussions and formulating possibly a committee to see how we can continuously improve our policies moving forward. So I'd like to instruct staff to look into that. Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
PUD 2021-18, city zone change from 2-family residential, limited commercial, and general office to planned unit development number 92, Happiness Plaza, generally located south of East Douglas Avenue at the northwest corner of East Oakland Avenue and South Clifton Avenue, 123, 125 South Clifton Avenue, and 3344 East Oakland Avenue.
Welcome, Scott.
Good morning. Scott Wadle from the Planning Department, and I think, again, we have the distinction of having the item with the longest title as part of the agenda. This case was presented at the City Council meeting on November 9th and was deferred to this meeting. As part of that action, the council directed staff to prepare a parking plan for College Hill. The city contracted with the car park to develop the plan. Since this case is being presented for the second time, I'll provide an overview of the case. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, but I do want to explain some of the nuances with it just for folks who have not read the staff report as members of the public. And then I will turn it over to staff from the car park to present the results of the plan/study. Please note that the zoning for this case, that zoning, including for this case, does not determine whether or not the 3 single-family houses can be demolished. That is through a separate process, not this zoning request. Since the meeting on November 9th, 2 of the houses have been demolished. I would also note, for the benefit of folks in the audience, again, that City Council policy is that the public hearing for planning agenda items occurs at the Planning Commission meeting. According to the policy, the City Council does not typically receive public comments on planning items. In terms of the case overview, the applicant has applied for a custom zoning, which is planned unit development, in order to allow for the use of the application site for parking to support their properties to the north. In terms of the site, the subject site consists of 3 parcels. You can see them here on the image. They're located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Oakland Avenue and Clifton Avenue, just south of Douglas. Subject site is approximately 1/3 of an acre in size. Consists of 2 vacant parcels and one with a single-family house. The majority of the site is zoned TF3. In terms of the requested zoning, the proposed planned unit development is largely based on the TF3 two-family zoning district, which generally allows for duplex residential. The staff report includes the text of the proposed planned unit development zoning. Highlights from this custom zoning includes the following. It would allow for parking in the front and street side setbacks, which is normally prohibited in the TF3 zoning. It would require the ancillary parking to comply with the standard supplementary use regulations in the zoning code, except to allow parking in the front and street side setbacks where normally prohibited. It would allow a farmer's market and require compliance with supplementary use requirements. In terms of review, on October 4th, the District 1 Advisory Board considered the application and recommended denial 6-4. On October 7th, the public hearing for this item was held at the Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission recommended approval with the following conditions. 1, that a planned unit development certificate be recorded with the Register of Deeds, and 2, that a copy of the recorded certificate must be provided to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission did not include farmers market as part of their approval. As part of their findings, the Planning Commission indicated the following: that the proposed parking lot is a quality design and fits with the neighborhood based on that design. And in terms of suitability, the property is suitable for both the use based on the commercial growth of the businesses in the area. There have been roughly 78 protests submitted for this application. I'll show you a map that shows where those came from. There were multiple valid protests submitted, which account for 33.75% of the protest area, which exceeds the 20% state threshold. Because of this, any vote to approve the application will require 6 of 7 votes from the council. In terms of recommended action, the recommended action is for the City Council to adopt the findings of the Planning Commission and to approve the requested zone change. There's also language in that motion to place the ordinance on the first reading, authorize signatures, and instruct the clerk to publish it. In terms of alternatives, there are a number of them. One is that you may override the MAPC recommendation, provide alternative findings, and deny the requested zone change. This would require 5 of 7 votes. You can approve the application with modifications to the Planning Commission recommendation. This would require 6 of 7 votes. And you can return the application to the Planning Commission for reconsideration, which would require a simple majority of 4 of 7 votes. So with that, then, I will introduce Jeff Wolf and Steve Hernandez from the Car Park. They're here to present the parking plan for College Hill. Please note, because of the short turnaround for this plan, including a holiday, we posted the occupancy counts data on Friday, and the PowerPoint was completed just this morning. So with that, I'll turn it over to them to present the information. But before I do, I'll take folks through some of the photos very quickly. So here's the site. Here's the zoning. Again, the yellow representing TF3 zoning. This is the map from the comp plan identifying the proposed site for new residential. This is an illustration that was submitted with the application showing the proposed parking lot. This is from the administrative adjustment that was provided, which reduced the amount of required parking spaces for the property, which is described in the staff report. This is, again, additional information from that same administrative adjustment. Here's the map of the protests that were submitted. The ones in blue are the ones that were valid protests. Yellow is invalid, and red are the protests that counted towards the 20%, above the 20% threshold for the protest area. Here's a zoomed-in map showing the protests in the area. Here are photos of the site. Again, these are not recent photos. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Jeff and Steve from the Car Park.
So how do I work the, will pop up? Thank you. Good afternoon, or I think it's close enough, it's good afternoon. My name is Jeff Wolf. I'm the president and CEO of the Car Park. I'm a Just a quick introduction. I'm a 34-year veteran of the parking industry, former chairman of the National Parking Association, our trade show. I've worked in Wichita for past 10 years, being your parking operator, the city garages and parking lots. And I'm also from this area, so I'm very familiar with the College Hill area. With me today is Steve Hernandez. He's our Vice President of Municipalities and Institutional Services. And we conducted a parking study, and as Scott said, in a very short amount of time. The way we went about this, go ahead and you can see the survey area there. It's really bounded by Oliver and on the east and Hillside on the west. And really we went about a block to 2 blocks on either side of Douglas. We started off very quickly of doing an inventory of all the on-street and off-street parking spaces in that area. Did a space count, and then the second step was on Wednesday, I believe it was November 17th, we did an occupancy count every 2 hours starting at 8 a.m. in the morning and finishing at 10 p.m. We turned around, did the same thing on Saturday, the 20th of November, doing an occupancy count of all the occupied spaces, again, on-street and off-street. So to go over the review and what we found, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Good morning. So I'm going to discuss a little bit of our findings, specifically related to the data. Also going to discuss some of the stakeholder comments that were made, and then a series of recommendations that we have for you on how to improve the College Hill parking environment. But I'd like to start by putting you in the mindset of a customer when they're going to park. You know, customers don't really care about how many parking spaces are available. They really only care about the likelihood of them finding one parking space that is convenient to their end destination. So when we look at this data, we're going to look at first the on-street parking data for Wednesday, November 17th. The first block that you're going to see in the top is on the east end of the study area. The middle block is the area north of Douglas, and the third block is the area south of Douglas. And this is, again, the on-street parking locations in this zone, and the color coding is very simple. Anything that is highlighted in red has occupancy levels in excess of 85%. In the industry, we generally consider that to be peak or at capacity. Anything in yellow is considered to have moderate demand, and that ranges between 60% and 85%. And then anything below 60% is highlighted in green. To highlight some of those key spots there, overall the occupancy throughout the on-street spaces that we surveyed on the 17th had an occupancy rate of 41.2%. Demand was most consistent along the 3,200 blocks of Victor Place and East Oakland. North Clifton will experience some spikes, as you would expect, around Clifton Square. And then 200 South Clifton saw some early demand during the morning hours, primarily because we believe that that is related to some of the residents that live at Clifton Place were parking there overnight, especially if they have more than one of the allotted spaces that they have in their carport associated with the property. Here's a map of the area, and you're going to see a few of these maps, and basically what you have there is the on-street spaces that we surveyed and their relative occupancy levels. So again, anything that is highlighted in green is below 60% occupied. Anything that has that orangish yellow color has moderate demand, and that was moderate demand throughout the entire course of the day, not just one specific hourly block, but that was over the entire course of the day. And you'll see most of that again is East Victor Place, 100 North Rattan around Uptown Landing, and then the areas bounding Hillcrest and the theater. The areas along East Oakland saw lower demand levels, and then the areas even around Clifton Square were fairly, there was parking readily available throughout most of the day in that zone. The concentric circles that you see, and I think these are important because they represent what is essentially acceptable walking distance from the area in question. And that outermost ring is a radius of approximately 650 feet, and then it moves in 100 feet from each concentric ring as you get to the center, and that green area is 250 feet. This next table represents the data that we took for our November 20th. And as you can see, there are certain areas started to see increased demand that didn't have it on the 17th. And some of that can be explained due to maybe it's the weekend, and so the residents are parking on the street more often. Some of it could be increased business activity around certain areas, whether it be Clifton Square or Happiness Plaza, et cetera. The interesting thing is on 4700 East Oakland, they saw very high levels of demand early on in the day, and then immediately at 4 o'clock, it pretty much dropped off completely. Overall occupancy ticked up just a single percentage point, essentially. It's only at 42.5%. So again, throughout the entire study area, it's pretty easy to find parking throughout the entire, at least on street. Demand continues to be strong along the 3200 blocks of Victor Place and East Oakland. And then 100 North Yale also experienced increased demand, and that's likely due to the demand at Clifton Square. Here's another map representing the demand areas, and you'll see that the area along East Oakland at 4700 East Oakland, that dropped off a little bit, and that was a change. And then the 100 block of South Clifton saw an increased spike in demand as well, and that's likely due to the business activity in that immediate area. So we look at the off-street parking data. You're going to see a lot more green. You're going to see a lot more green. Only 4 of these parking lots that we were asked to survey had at least one instance of what we would consider to be moderate demand. And then as you look at the data overall, occupancy rates were at approximately 22.2%. Happiness Plaza experienced the highest occupancy rate of 53.2%. And then Uptown Landing also saw high demand or moderate demand at 52%. Now, I'm sorry, let me go back really quick. I will say that our counts revealed that the parking associated with Frost Bakery only saw 26% demand. Here's another representation of the off-street hotspots during the weekday. We kept the on-street parking information in there because we thought it was important for this exercise and for you to start to see the trends that are going on in the area. Here is the data on November 20th. Now you're starting to see increased demand in certain areas. Again, Clifton Square and Happiness Plaza, they both saw spikes throughout a longer period of duration over the course on a Saturday. And they also had the highest occupancy rates of approximately 61%. But overall demand actually decreased down to 19.2%. Here is another map of what it looks like for the off-street demand with the on-street overlay. And again, you have a sense of the walkable distance from Happiness Plaza to the other areas where parking is available. And then through discussion with Scott, and we really wanted to understand exactly how many parking spaces, public parking spaces, I'll keep it to public parking spaces available within what we would consider to be walking distance to Happiness Plaza. So you'll see in total, there's 310 spaces in the study area. And of that is primarily on-street parking as well as the parking that's associated with Happiness Plaza and Frost Bakery. And within the innermost concentric circle, there's 115 publicly available parking spaces. And then outward you go from there, you have 58 spaces in the gray area. The yellow has 60 spaces, the orange has 48, and then the red has 29. So what exactly does this all mean? And this is where, we had a number of stakeholder discussions. And, when we looked at the residents that we spoke to, it was pretty consistent that the residents had lived in the area for at least 5 years or more. That was really important because we wanted to make sure that we were talking to people that were really vested in the community. And through these conversations, it was quite evident that everybody had a vested interest in how this project was going to unfold and how it was going to impact their community, not only today, but going forward. Most of these folks that we spoke to reside within the area of Happiness Plaza, or what we would consider to be that walkable distance. And I asked the question, why do you want to continue to live in College Hill and in this particular area, and what keeps you supporting these local businesses? And everybody talked about they appreciate the historic architecture. They appreciate the fact that that the area has been making improvements over the years, that there are a number of homes that have been reinvesting into their community, And yes, there are some homes that, still need to have some updates made to them, but they were all very supportive of their community, and they wanted to see it be maintained as much as possible. So I'm not going to address all of the opinions that they expressed, but the first and foremost, the one that, I've quoted it because it was quite evident that this individual felt this way. College Hill doesn't have a parking problem. College Hill has a walking problem. And I think that goes, most people, and as I said in the beginning, everybody wants the most convenient parking space. That's why on-street parking is such a valuable resource. Everybody wants to be able to park directly in front of the business that they're going to be patronizing. Not everybody's like my grandmother. My grandmother loves to park as far away from the front door to her store as possible so she can get the exercise. And I understand that perspective as well. But I mean, in general, that is the way a lot of the residents felt. Second one I'll address, most College Hill residents did not feel patrons parking on the street were causing an inconvenience to nearby homeowners. However, some stated that during certain times this is the case. And the most notable instance that I'll tell you is when there are baseball games being played out at Blessed Sacrament. A lot of the residents complain that has an ability to spill over into the neighboring streets and so forth. It's important to understand when you're talking to residents of communities and how parking impacts them, you're trying to understand, are you really truly being inconvenienced by parking on the street and by people that are non-residents parking on the street? And that was really important to understand their perspective on that. College Hill residents expressed a great deal of concern allowing passenger and commercial vehicles to exit the proposed parking lot directly onto East Oakland. And in that particular stretch, the 3300 block of East Oakland, it is more narrow at 3300 than it is at 3400 East Oakland. So that's something to take into consideration. And I think that is an area where some people understood, or that's an area that they wanted to make sure it was expressed. We also spoke to non-residents, and this included commercial entertainment venues as well as some of the religious institutions that are in the area. Some of these folks reside in College Hill, or they used to reside in College Hill. We asked them questions like, why did you want to continue to do business in College Hill? And a lot of them said that they're attracted to the area due to the historic nature of the community, but they also feel that College Hill is embracing more modern trends. As it relates to, how do they address employee parking? Most of the employees that they have at their businesses, they are parking using their business's own supply. In some cases, they have shared use agreements, whether it be formal or informal agreements with neighboring businesses that allows them to use their available supply. This is really important. Employers want to ensure that their staff has the ability to safely walk at the end of their shift back to where they've parked. That's really important. One of the businesses that I spoke to, they have a buddy system in place that ensures that there's always at least two people that are walking together to go to their vehicles, and I think that's an important ask of area businesses, is to ensure that they have something like that in place. Some of the businesses expressed concerns of their employees crossing over Douglas to where more readily available parking is located, and we can address some of those in the recommendations. I was also surprised to learn, though, that several break-ins have occurred at some of the places of business along Douglas, and so that was an area of concern that was also addressed. So patron parking. I think all these folks are receiving some level of feedback from their patrons. They all recognize that they may have limited parking at times, but ultimately their customers find a way. I was in talking to the theater, there they have 200, 300 people coming. They have a very small, limited amount of dedicated parking available to them, but they all seem to find a way to park, and they all walk some distances. Maybe they're in excess of 650 feet. I'm not 100% certain of that, but they're all simply finding a place to park in nearby businesses. As I said, some folks have established shared use agreements that allows them to use other available parking supplies. Some of those are formal and informal. The shared liability is a concern, and I certainly understand that and can appreciate that as a parking operator. And we've got, there are some potential solutions to on how to address that that we can discuss. And then some have concerns or expressed concerns that limited dedicated off-street parking may hinder their long-term success in the College Hill neighborhood, which is certainly understandable, and want to empathize for that. So some of the recommendations on short term, I did a general search on Google Maps. Google Maps is it is the most widely used navigation application for smartphones in the market today. And when you do a search for parking in an area, it usually does a pretty good job of telling you all the available parking. But this is an area where I feel like whether it be the city or area businesses, can improve upon, and that is making their parking known to the public. So if I were an area business, I would ensure that my parking is known, that is going to support those area businesses. And you can easily do that by creating pinpoints and claiming it as your business and going forth. Not to get into the details too much, but it is an easy solution and a low-cost solution to the area. The other area that needs to be addressed is improving the wayfinding for public parking. I know that the city doesn't own any lots in that area, but you certainly have managed on-street parking and time-limited space zones, and I think it would be important to make those areas a little bit more widely known and recognizable. So the next item would be shared use agreements. I think that this is an area where it can occur and it should occur. There's a lot of cities, and more looking at urban city centers, that are getting away from minimum parking requirements as a whole, because they recognize when you start doing a deeper dive into parking inventory, you recognize that parking is available during certain hours a day for some businesses, and they don't necessarily need that parking later on in the day, so then they partner with area restaurants and retail establishments, bars, et cetera. That's a viable option for this particular area in a lot of cases. Next option, we heard from a lot of residents where they asked, why not have valet parking as an option? And the benefit of having valet parking for certain establishments is that it actually can reduce some of their shared liability concerns, because then that operator enters into the agreement to stage those vehicles and to park those vehicles, and then allows the business establishment to focus on what they do best, and that's enhancing their customer experience. And we focus, I say we as a general, we referring to parking, valet companies and operators, we focus on the actual parking experience. Another recommendation that I feel is pretty important, we heard from a number of different residents that they don't have a problem with people parking on the street, but they have a problem with the way people are parking on the street. Oftentimes it actually creates a hindrance for them to pull out of their driveways or into their driveways, because folks are blocking those access points. And because of the way that they're parked, it also creates sight triangle issues as well, where you may not be able to see the boy riding his bike down the middle of the road as you're pulling out of your driveway. I don't know of any issues that have occurred in the College Hill area, but it's certainly a potential to occur, because I think even in some of the images that Scott was showing, you see vehicles parked directly adjacent or on top of the driveways for some of these residents. And that really does create a concern, and I think it would be important for the city to consider using painted curbs to restrict or to delineate where parking is available and where it's not available. And that way you can maintain some of the historic nature of the community by not littering the streets with street signage, if you will. So I think the painted curb is a viable option, relatively low-cost option. The next item that we heard was some of the concerns about pedestrian crossings along Douglas Avenue. Not to get too far into this, but I think there are some opportunities to improve conditions along Douglas for pedestrians to cross the area. I think that'll help both businesses as well as the residents in the area. And then another recommendation would be to expand the use of 2-hour parking. And if you do that, anytime that you expand and create parking, you're also going to have some element of enforcement that will be necessary. And I don't know that there's a tremendous amount of enforcement that is occurring in the 1- and 2-hour zones within College Hill. This is an area that you would certainly want to ensure does take place, because turnover is necessary in order to create strong economic activity. And you want that turnover to take place. You don't want employees parking all day long on the street. You don't want residents parking all day long on the street in a commercial district. So those are items that you need to consider or should consider in the future. And then long-term, in the future, the city may consider residential parking permits. Now, the image that I have here is from Richmond, Virginia. I've spent a lot of time in Richmond, Virginia. I've done some parking study work with the city and specifically in their residential district zones. As you see in that image right there, that is a residential parking problem. That is the residential district of Oregon Hill in Richmond, Virginia, and that is what every street looks like in Oregon Hill and Richmond. That is not your current environment today in College Hill. So in conclusion, there's a lot of parking available in the College Hill area. It may not necessarily be the most convenient for some of the businesses that are frequented, but there certainly is a lot of parking available. And I just kind of went over some of the recommendations that I believe are relatively low cost and easy for the city to consider and to implement. Thank you.
With that, we'll stand for any questions.
All right, let's open up to questions for staff. Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Scott, and maybe car park gentlemen. Just one quick question. So if, for instance, 2 new businesses come online in this space or a different time of the year, do we think they would reach capacity and parking and need more, or would this still sufficiently handle it?
Well, I think it's a very valid question. It's certainly something that the council has to consider. I think they are, as you saw in the data, there are certainly periods of the day that they are essentially at capacity for their parking spaces. And if you're adding additional businesses that are increasing demand, they may get to a point where they need additional parking. But again, there are the potential for shared use cases, and I think the reason why we went back and looked at how many publicly available parking spaces are available to that area, and when we did the counts and we saw that there's 115 parking spaces in that green zone, there are a lot of publicly available parking spaces there. And I think the owners have element of control over 56 spaces between Frost and Happiness Plaza, which is roughly, I think it was 48% of that 115 parking spaces in that green zone, if you will.
Thank you.
Yep.
Further questions for staff? Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, is this the first time we've ever used a car park for a zoning case?
Yes, this is the first time we've used them for a zoning case. However, we do use them to do the counts for our system that they manage as well as additional lots. So they are familiar with doing parking counts.
Appreciate your thoroughness.
Further questions of staff? All right, let's open up to public comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, this is not a public comment agenda item.
Okay. I think you're right. My apologies, because MAPC, we've already had public hearing, and our ordinance does not allow us to do public comment.
It's a council policy that sets this rule for no public comment at this stage. It's the policy that you have in place.
Thank you for the reminder. We will adhere to our set policy. So with that, open up for discussion. Apologies to folks who are here to comment on this item. Is there discussion on this? Well, let's hear what Vice Mayor Johnson has to say, as this resides in District 1.
Thanks, Mayor. This item has received quite a bit of robust discussion amongst, I think, all stakeholders involved. Given the information that we've received and discussions had, I would make the motion to have the city council deny the applications for the reasons stated in MAPD's staff report, and specifically because I believe the parking lot at its proposed location is not in character with the remainder of the neighborhood. There's a potential risk to public safety because I believe the proposed ingress-egress from the lot onto East Oakland creates a potential traffic issue. Based upon the communication I have received, it is also opposed by a vast majority of the neighbors and inconsistent with the recommendation of the city's professional planning staff.
So your motion is to deny the, I will second. So discussion, motion. There's no further discussion. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 6 yea votes to 1 nay, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Airport Hotel LLC concession and lease agreement, Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Bradley Christopher, Airport Department. I'm happy to present this item for your consideration today. Airport Hotel LLC concession and lease agreement. A little background on this item. In 2017, an unsolicited request from one of the developers of the Hampton Inn and Suites was received to build and operate a new hotel on airport property. That's at 1523 South Ridge Road. A right of first refusal is contained in the agreement with the Doubletree Hotel, and those right of first refusal provisions have been fully satisfied. The developer, however, remains interested to build, lease, and operate an upscale, high-quality, and nationally recognized hotel brand. It's a graphic depiction, the approximate location on South Ridge Road. That's just immediately north of and abutting the Hampton Inn and Suites. The proposed developer is Airport Hotel LLC. The principals are Mitesh Patel and Sumit Patel. I believe Summit's with us in council chambers this afternoon. These principals have constructed, owned, and operated several hotel properties in the region, including the Hampton Inn and Suites at the airport. Staff have completed a current and thorough vetting of the principals, and the financial, credit, and tax liability history have been determined to be satisfactory. The proposed hotel flag has not yet been designated. However, by the contractual agreement, it is required to be an upscale, high-quality, and nationally recognized select service hotel brand. Some of the key financial and business terms. Airport Hotel LLC will lease approximately 140,000 square feet of land on which to build a hotel of not less than 100 guest rooms. The minimum private investment is $15 million for the construction and furnishings of the property. Lease term will commence, proposed January 1, 2023. Will be a 30-year initial lease term with 2 10-year renewal options. Land rent for the first 3 years is established the rate of 52.5262 cents per square foot. That will net $73,668 annual rent. Starting in January 2026, land rent will be replaced with a concession fee of 1% of gross revenues, or a minimum annual guarantee of the $73,000, whichever is higher. Subsequently, the concession fee increases to 3.5% of the gross revenues in 2050, 4.5 in 2058, and then at 5.5 in 2063. Prior to the agreement commencement date, which is proposed again to be January 1, 2023, airport hotels will deposit $2 million in an escrow account to incentivize timely construction of the hotel. The escrow funds will be released upon completion of the hotel roof. A separate cash deposit of $250,000 will be placed in trust prior to the agreement commencement date. This is the largest amount estimated to be necessary to resolve an outstanding IRS tax lien should a tax challenge not succeed. The funds will be held in trust subject to direction from the city manager for 60 months after agreement commencement. Airport hotels may choose to seek airport special facility revenue bond financing. All facilities improvements will be owned by the Wichita Airport Authority. Airport hotels will be required to make capital improvements and reinvestment obligations as are customarily required by a national brand franchise. There is no city funding capital outlay for this project. The construction. Following execution of this agreement, the developer will apply for a hotel brand franchise. They will begin architecture, engineering, design, and FAA airspace evaluation process, and construction permitting will begin. Construction is expected to begin in early 2023, assuming all permitting has been approved, as well as all other contractual obligations being met. A licensed commercial general contractor will be engaged by airport hotels for construction. Completion of the hotel and certificate of occupancy is anticipated by June 1 of 2024. The original financial and business terms of this agreement were reviewed by the Wichita Airport Advisory Board at its April 5, 2021 meeting and unanimously recommended for approval to the Wichita Airport Authority Board. The trust fund for tax resolution and requiring the use of a commercial general contractor are additional obligations of the developer, which responded to prior Wichita Airport Authority Board review. Staff's recommendation to the Airport Authority Board is to approve the concession and lease agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff? See none, thank you. Is there input from the public? Come on up here, Harvey.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all, and I'll try not to yell at you. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. We have worked very diligently over the last several months to address the concerns that were originally raised by the council, and I think we've adequately addressed those for staff purposes. With me today are the developer, Sumit Patel and Ed Robinson, who are available to answer questions if you have any about any of the material that we have provided to you. So otherwise, well, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here.
Harvey, can you go ahead and state your full name and address for the record?
I'm sorry, I'm Harvey Sorensen with the law firm of Holston Siefken, offices at 1551. in the Commerce Bank building, and I am a resident of the city of Eastboro.
Very good. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, sir. Harvey, appreciate you being here and meeting with me to discuss some of the concerns that I had when this project first came to us. I'm pleased that we've been able to work out those details, and we have a better project, not only for the Airport Authority, but for the city of Wichita. So I have great comfort in where we have been able to get to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity to have done that.
Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor, and I met with Mr. Sorensen as well, and I appreciate you answering my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further questions? See none. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone. And it's Waterfront Parkway.
We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? This item's in, it's District 4. Is that you? It is. Chair recognizes Councilmember Bluebog. I believe this item's in District 4.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And I'd like to take staff's recommendation to approve the agreement and authorize the necessary signatures.
Motion has been made and seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
All right, let's start with appointments if folks don't mind. I am reappointing Alex Dean to the Sedgwick County Waste Management Committee. Are there other appointments? Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I would like to appoint Tammy Ray to the Sustainability Integration Board, and I would like to appoint Jennifer McDonald to the District 2 Advisory Board. I've sent both these names to the clerk. Thank you.
All right, are there other appointments? There's no other appointments, then I'll make a motion to accept the appointments.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk open a roll. Having received 7 yea votes, those appointments, or that motion does pass. Those appointments are made. Back on just general comments for the good of the body. Are there general comments? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Earlier this week, actually yesterday, the Kansas Health Science Center was granted pre-accreditation status, and they can now start accepting applications for students beginning in August of next year, and I think that's a tremendous win for what is a catalyst project in our core, and I just want to congratulate Dr. Masson and the entire team.
Yeah, just to echo that, they are on schedule, and Wichita is now on schedule to hosting the only medical DO school in the state. So it's a huge plus for us. Congratulations to their team over there. Next person on the list is Councilmember Tuttle. I was going to make a comment about Councilmember Fry's beard, but I probably won't. So we'll just go on to Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you. I think we've all been watching the tragedy that's happened in Kentucky and Arkansas over the last few days, and I think all of our thoughts and prayers are with them, and it certainly makes me think of our own police and fire department and how thankful we are that they're so well qualified and trained so that if we ever have a response such as that, they'll be able to address it immediately. The other thing, I wasn't able to attend yesterday, unfortunately, but it brought to remind the Battle of the Badges and the need for blood, especially during the holidays. People tend to donate less during the holidays. I know our own Red Cross is going to be going down south and assisting with the efforts, but if you have the opportunity during this time, the best gift that you could ever give anyone is the life-saving gift of blood. So I encourage everyone to help in any way they can with the victims in Arkansas and in Kentucky, and also help our own community members. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to give kudos to our parks team for Saturday's tree lighting. Santa Claus even paid a visit to Wichita a few weeks early. Sat out and took pictures with the kids. So that was a great event. Great job by our team. And the mayor actually lit the tree the first time. So that was good.
I had help. From a couple of young folks who grabbed a hold of the switch, so we got that done. We're really glad Santa Claus was able to make it. We were a little worried, but Santa showed up, didn't let our young folks down, so very thankful for that. Just to follow up on Councilmember Tuttle's discussion about the blood donation drive, that is going on until January 2nd. Just to remind folks that, as Councilmember did, how important it is to get out and donate blood. When you do, you can vote for either our firefighters or police officers. That's the Battle of the Badges part of this. I think even EMS is in on that, but that's a county thing, so vote for firefighters or police officers. And also, just throwing out there, we have I personally have a competition with Phil Thompson of 104.5 The Fox. We are asking folks to give, this month's competition is asking folks to make a donation to the Kansas Food Bank. As the holidays are coming up, we want to make sure everyone does have enough to eat. So please make a contribution if you can to the Kansas Food Bank, and you can vote for myself or for Phil over at the Fox. Also, I believe that he is auctioning off a autographed Wichita Monopoly or Wichitopoly. I guess it's a Wichita version of Monopoly that he had me sign. I didn't know he was going to use it against me later to beat us in in this contest. But he called me today and he wants me to auction off a coffee. I don't think there's anyone who wants to have coffee with me, but we're putting out on a table as well. If there's someone who wants to have coffee with myself, that's I guess what we're putting forward. But again, we got these two fundraisers going on, one for the Kansas Food Bank, the other one, of course, is a blood drive. So we ask folks to help us out with those. Any further comments at this point? See none with that. No blue sheet today. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their vote. It is a non-debatable motion. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.